Welcome to HP Fanfiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. Harry had spent the remainder of the day preparing for his expected confrontation with the Dark Lord. He was ready. He was quiet and focused as he knew he would need to be when dealing with Tom. What did surprise him was that he wasn't nervous. In fact, he was looking forward to facing the man once again, knowing that he had the advantage of planning in advance. Harry realized he did not fear Voldemort any longer. He had seen what was waiting for him on the other side, and he had no reason to be fearful. If things did go badly, he would find the peace he had always wanted. And if things went well, then he had taken a major step in finishing Riddle once and for all, and he would be that much closer to the peace he craved on this plane of existence. He entered the drawing room to find Arcturus waiting for him. The man had dressed in battle robes, and even at his age, still cut quite the terrifying figure. "Ready?" the older man asked simply, to which Harry nodded. "Then let's not waste any more time. We have to meet Twinkles and your godfather," he said, looking at the clock. Both men disapparated and found themselves at the gates of Hogwarts, where Dumbledore and Sirius were already waiting for them, the latter looking very nervous. "Are you sure about this?" he asked Harry worriedly. "It has to be done," Harry replied. "Just have my back when I need it and everything will be fine," he assured the man. "Always," Sirius responded firmly. "I made these for us," Dumbledore cut in, handing each man a necklace. "It is a portkey that will bring you straight to the hospital wing if you need it," he explained. "Just use the phrase Hogwarts help, and it will take you there," he finished. "Good thinking," Arcturus intoned, offering a rare compliment. "Shall we get on with it?" he asked. "Let's," Dumbledore replied. "I have Alastair, Kingsley and Nymphadora ready to send out the alerts when the time is right," he informed the trio. The group disappeared from where they stood and appeared outside the visitors' entrance to the ministry. They chose this location so that they would purposely be seen by any of Tom's men keeping watch. Arcturus and Sirius immediately disillusioned themselves and they all entered the telephone box. "Welcome to the Ministry of Magic," a female voice spoke after Harry had dialed the number. "Please state the purpose of your visit," she instructed. "Harry Potter and Albus Dumbledore meeting Tom Riddle," Harry replied casually. Harry could hear Sirius snicker a little, despite the gravity of the situation, and Arcturus cursing under his breath. "Thank you, and please enjoy your visit today," the voice said, and the line went dead. There was a sound of something being dropped into the coin tray, and Harry picked up the badges and handed one to Dumbledore. "A memento," Dumbledore exclaimed with a chuckle before pinning it to his chest proudly. "Idiots," Arcturus muttered. The group stepped out of the elevator as it reached the atrium and made their across the empty hall to the desk occupied by a single wizard, who immediately stood when he caught sight of Harry and Dumbledore. "Chief Warlock, Lord Potter," he greeted them with a bow. "What brings you here this evening?" he asked conversationally. "Lord Potter and myself have a very important meeting with an acquaintance," Dumbledore replied casually. "He is not the most pleasant of men, so as Chief Warlock, I am giving you the rest of the night off," he informed the man. "I don't know, sir," the man said nervously. "Madame Bones wouldn't like it," he added. "I will inform Amelia Marcel. Go and spend some time with your wife and your son," he instructed the man with a smile. "Thank you, sir. I will, sir," the man responded gratefully. "Lord Potter," he intoned with a bow before exiting. "He would just be a meaningless obstacle to Tom and an unnecessary casualty," Dumbledore said sadly. "Shall we?" he asked. The foursome entered the golden-gated lifts and made their way down to the basement level where the Department of Mysteries was located, where they were met by another wizard, this one much older with a very calculating stare. "Albus," the man greeted with a nod. "I assume you are here for it," he said knowingly. "Indeed we are," Dumbledore confirmed. "I imagine we will be joined by others shortly," he added warningly. "I shall make myself scarce then," the other man replied. "I imagine these other two gentlemen are with you," he said, nodding to the disillusioned pair. "As sharp as ever, Clarence," Dumbledore praised. "There are people watching beyond the door," he asked. "Been there for weeks," the other man replied with a shrug. They think their cloaks hide them in here, he said, half amused. Don't make a mess in my department. And don't ask me for any more ludicrous favors, he finished warningly before he made his exit. The Hall of Prophecies is just through here, Dumbledore explained to Harry, who just nodded and proceeded without hesitation. They passed through the door and entered the hall, ready to retrieve the thing Tom Riddle sought so desperately. They were seen by one of the men keeping watch on the room under the orders of the Dark Lord. He had been here every night for weeks, waiting for someone to enter. He was bored and tired as he saw Potter and Dumbledore enter the room, but was immediately alert once he was aware of their presence. He watched as they passed through and entered the Hall of Prophecies. Finally, this miserable task would come to an end. He gratefully activated his portkey to inform his master of the development. Break. Lord Voldemort was sat in the drawing room of Malfoy Manor, lost in his own thoughts. His negotiations with the vampires were slow, but he was confident that they would see sense, especially if he visited them personally. He already had a considerable force of foreign wizards. Although most were mediocre at best, there were some that showed some promise. Greyback was currently on his way back from his recruitment drive amongst the werewolves, something he had always been sure would be a successful effort. And he of course had the giants on side along with the Dementors. His force was growing and become formidable indeed. He was pulled by his musings as the door burst open, revealing a man who was of no consequence. The Dark Lord was annoyed by his interruption, and was about to simply curse the man until he prostrated himself before him. "My lord," the man spoke quickly. "Potter and Dumbledore are there," he informed him breathlessly. Lord Voldemort was immediately on full alert and stood suddenly. "Are they alone?" he asked the man with a hint of urgency. "Yes, my lord," the man confirmed with a bow. "Fools," the Dark Lord muttered with glee. "Pass me your arm," he instructed. The man stepped forward and raised the sleeve on his left arm and presented it to his master. Voldemort touched the dark mark with the tip of his wand, summoning his most trusted followers, minus Snape. It would not do to reveal the man as yet. "You shall be rewarded for your service, my friend," he promised the man who was grimacing in discomfort. "Now leave and speak of this to no one," he instructed firmly. He paced the length of the room and waited for his inner circle to arrive. Lucius was first, followed by Bella, and within 5 minutes the room was full of his most loyal followers. "My friends," he addressed them triumphantly. "The old fool and Potter are retrieving what it is I seek," he informed the gathering. "We shall liberate it from them," he added. "Do not fail me," he finished warningly. With that, the group disappeared to get the prophecy led by the Dark Lord himself. Failure, they knew, was not an option. Break. Dumbledore led Harry through the many shelved aisles of the Hall of Prophecies, and paused at the one pertaining to the young man and the Dark Lord. "This is it," he said gravely. "The reason that Tom came for you all those years ago." Harry picked up the glass orb filled with white smoke and pocketed it without hesitation. It truly meant nothing to him. In his eyes, Tom Riddle had sealed his fate the day he attacked and murdered his parents. Prophecy or no prophecy, it mattered not to the young man. "I suggest we make our way back to the atrium. Clarence would be most upset with us if his department was harmed in any way," the older man said in amusement. The duo exited the hall and made their way back through the now very eerily quiet corridors, with the other two in tow. Still under their disillusionment charm, they made their way to the elevator to make the ascent back to the atrium. "I suspect we will have company," Dumbledore said gravely with no hint of his usual twinkle. "I hope so," Harry replied with a smirk of anticipation. Dumbledore couldn't help but admire the boy and how he seemed to take it all in his stride. The elevator arrived at the atrium and the doors opened, allowing them to exit. Dumbledore and Harry walked into the center of the room, the latter drawing his wand. Harry could already sense the presence of those lying in wait. Potter, the Dark Lord, spat menacingly as he emerged from the shadows, followed by around 30 of his followers, most of which Harry recognized either from the Wizengamot or the media as escaped convicts. "Hello, Tom," Harry greeted the Dark Lord casually. "It's nice of you to join us," he added sarcastically. The Dark Lord was taken aback by the casual tone in which the boy addressed him. No one spoke to Lord Voldemort that way. It immediately irritated him. What's wrong, Tom? Harry questioned. You expected me to be trembling with fear? Harry said with a laugh. You have spent the last year licking your wounds and living in fear. Voldemort replied heatedly. No, Harry responded with a shake of his head. I have spent the last year preparing. You have spent the last 14 years hiding like the coward you are, Harry returned, causing the Dark Lord's followers to hiss in disapproval. I am no coward, Voldemort spat. I fear no man, he added. You should fear me, Tom, Harry said with every hint of joviality absent from his tone and demeanor. You have tried and failed to kill me many times now, but I will not make the same mistakes, he vowed. Look me in the eyes, Tom, Harry commanded angrily. See for yourself that I am not afraid of you, he spat his eyes, now glowing in his fury. Voldemort looked the boy in the eyes and saw nothing but anger and the desire for revenge, something he had never experienced before. How dare you? Bellatrix screeched in anger. How dare you speak to the Dark Lord like that, you bastard, she hissed. No, Bella, Voldemort commanded. He is right, he added, much to the surprise of his followers. I have failed to kill him, but those failings are behind me, he said confidently. Now give me the prophecy, Harry, and I will let you and the old man live. You have my word, he tried. Harry laughed darkly. Your word means nothing to me, Riddle, he spat. You really want this? He asked, removing the orb from his pocket. Then take it, he added, rolling the ball to the surprised man. It means nothing to me because I am going to kill you anyway, he finished with a venomous tone. Harry, what have you done? Dumbledore asked urgently. Harry just smirked. That is very kind of you, Harry, Voldemort said sarcastically, but you should trust the word of no man, he added with a feral grin, drawing his wand. I never do, Tom, Harry replied in amusement. It was then that all hell broke loose. The many fires in the atrium burst into life with green flames in which a score of men and women exited, led by Amelia Bones, Tonks, Kingsley and Moody. Auras, one of the Death Eaters, shouted in panic and began firing spells, followed immediately by his companions. You really thought I didn't know you would come here, Tom? Harry asked. I just wanted everyone to see you were back, he explained, pointing to the newest arrivals. Cornelius Fudge himself was stood watching the confrontation in awe, surrounded by men and women, some of who were taking photos without abandon. Very clever, Potter, Voldemort spat. But it doesn't matter because you won't live past tonight, he added, launching his first spell towards the boy. Harry simply dodged and returned fire. It was time to see what he was truly made of. Break. Sirius dropped his charm the instant the spellfire began and looked for someone to engage. He was rewarded with the sight of Rabastan Lestrange, a man he had always despised since school. Lestrange, he shouted to get the man's attention. Black, the man spat in reply when he saw who had called him. I owe you for what you did to Frank and Alice, Sirius said angrily, and immediately began firing his most lethal curses. Rabastan was taken aback, not expecting to be fighting someone willing to use such spells. He had only been anticipating stunners or spells that would incapacitate him, and it took him a moment to adjust. What would Dumbledore think of one of his golden boys using dark magic? Rabastan said with a tot. I don't fight for Dumbledore, Sirius retorted angrily. I fight for my godson, he added, throwing a dark cutting curse that caught the man on the shoulder. Rabastan hissed in pain at the burning sensation he was experiencing. Avada Kedavra, he roared, triumphantly pointing his wand at his opponent. He was surprised as Black simply conjured a granite slab blocking the spell. He then banished the debris towards Rabastan, who was still shocked by the skill the other man was showing. He managed to produce a shield in time to block most of the projectiles, but felt a sudden sharp impact strike his knee that caused him to scream in agony. He looked down to see a black arrow protruding from his leg, and he knew his fight was over. He reached to remove his emergency portkey he had stashed in his pocket when he felt another impact, this time on his hand. He roared in both pain and anger as he realized his limb had been demolished by a bone breaker. Before he could comprehend what had happened, a similar pain erupted from his other knee and he fell to the ground. He looked down to see little more than a bleeding stump remain of his left leg. The shock set in, and the man began to shake. He looked up to see the unforgiving face of Sirius Black leering at him. "Goodbye, Lestrange," Sirius said darkly and fired a pure black jet of light towards the man. Rabaston felt every fiber of his being scream in protest at the onslaught, and then he simply knew no more. Sirius looked distastefully upon the man for a brief second before he turned to aid the Auras. "One down," he mumbled. "Break." Arcturus immediately sought out the only person he wished to speak to on this night, his granddaughter. He made his way through the crowd, carefully dodging and shielding as necessary, until he came across the woman. He watched as she mercilessly dispensed of 2 auras and began scanning the crowd for her next victim. Her eyes fell upon the old man and a look of confusion came over her blood-covered face. "Grandfather?" she asked incredulously. "Bella," he greeted her simply. "I have come to offer you one chance to drop your wand and get out of here," he informed the woman, who immediately scowled at his words. "Never," she spat in reply. "I fight proudly for the Dark Lord," she added firmly. "Then Potter will kill you, and I won't be able to stop him," Arcturus said a little sadly. "Little baby Potty wouldn't stand a chance," the deranged woman replied smugly. "It would be my pleasure to end him, but I will make sure I get my fun with him first," she said, hungrily, licking some blood from her lips. "It would be an honor for the half-blooded bastard to be my plaything for a while," she finished, cackling madly. "Potter will kill you," Arcturus said firmly. "You mock him for his blood, yet you follow a man with less magical blood than he has," he explained a little desperately. "Tom Riddle is his name. Son a muggle and a witch," he added. "Like it or not, Potter shares our blood and he will win," he concluded confidently. "He will not," Bellatrix screeched, ignoring everything that her grandfather had told her. "My lord is powerful and ruthless," she said quietly. "No one could stand against him, let alone a filthy half-blood," she announced, with no doubt evident. "Look, Bella," Arcturus instructed, pointing at Harry and the Dark Lord. "Potter does not fear him, and is at least equal in power and skill," he tried. He does cut an impressive figure, doesn't he?" she mused, watching the fight between the two in awe. "I imagine he will make me a fine toy for some time," she said, biting her lip. "I may as well have some use of the boy," she finished with a slow nod. "Bella, drop your wand and go," Arcturus instructed her firmly. "I will not leave," the crazed woman responded angrily. "You can't make me," she said petulantly, aiming her wand at the man. "Do not make me do this, Bella," Arcturus pleaded. "You are my blood, and that is the most important thing in this world," he tried desperately. "No, you stopped being my blood when you let my father marry me off to that pig," she spat. "I wanted to choose who I married like Andromeda and Sissy," she said sadly, and with the most clarity she had spoken with. "Instead I got stuck with that moron, but I made the best of it, and the Dark Lord chose me as his right hand. I will not turn my back on him," she vowed, and fired a spell towards her grandfather, who simply batted it aside. "So be it," Arcturus mumbled sadly. "Break." Albus Dumbledore immediately went on the defense and began shielding and protecting as many of the Auras and his friends as he could. On the outside he appeared calm and collected, but on the inside he was experiencing panic and worry. He had not felt in a long time. He was just very grateful that Harry was there handling Tom personally. It was not a confrontation he desired personally. He managed to subdue a few of Tom's men and continued his protective measures as best he could, but could not help but take in the utter devastation around him, the true horror of battle, a horror he was not and would never be used to. It saddened him greatly to witness such a waste of life as it was taken with cruel negligence. He watched as Sirius dispatched of Rabaston Lestrange without hesitation, and felt pity for the man for the act he had to carry out. He knew Sirius was just doing his duty as a godfather, but wished that it was not necessary. He watched as he simply moved on and began engaging other foes, without a seeming second thought for the man he had just killed. He saw Arcturus confront Bellatrix and watched as they shared a brief confrontation before the witch attacked her own grandfather. He shook his head in sadness at that act in particular. If Dumbledore had learnt one thing in his life, it was that family was a very precious gift and should be cherished above all else. Had he had the chance, he would have done anything he could for his family to ensure their happiness. But alas, his chance was taken from him with the death of them all except for his brother, who could not forgive Albus for his mistakes. He watched as some of the auras fell to the attacks from Tom's followers and watched further as they fought back with everything they had. After what seemed an eternity, Tom's people had either been captured, killed, or cut their losses and escaped. He turned to watch the only remaining confrontation taking place, the one between Harry and the Dark Lord. Everyone remaining simply stared in awe at the battle between the two, none daring to intervene. It was far too dangerous to even comprehend, and each was satisfied to watch the spectacle take place. Break. The Dark Lord was fighting furiously. None had ever tested him as Potter was. Lord Voldemort was admittedly impressed by the boy's skill, speed, and power, but it was the magic the boy wielded that had him concerned. There was a worrying familiarity about it. Several times he had had to reinforce his shields, or simply abandon it altogether and dodge. When he met a spell he was unfamiliar with, it frustrated the man to no end. There was no doubt that the magic was designed to kill, and the ruthlessness of the boy was admirable. He was more than a worthy opponent. Despite the type of magic both were using, neither had managed to land a hit on the other, much to the Dark Lord's chagrin. He needed to get creative, and he had just the thing he needed. Break. Harry had never fought someone with such spell knowledge or power. It took him a few moments to adjust accordingly to the new level of strength he was experiencing, but he took it in his stride nonetheless. He fought with reckless abandon but did not dip into his entire repertoire, knowing that this would not be the final confrontation. He needed to keep some stuff hidden for when it was necessary. He knew he had youth and speed on his side, but Tom more than made up for that with his knowledge. He knew their power was of a similar level. He knew he needed to make Tom flee, and he came up with an idea to make that happen. He had achieved what he wanted here after all. He dropped the shield he had conjured to block one of his foes' spells and began hissing in parcel tongue, causing the Dark Lord to take pause and look confused. Just what he wanted. He unleashed his spell with all the power and fury he could muster, and watched Tom's eyes widen in surprise as the green light hurtled towards him. The Dark Lord attempted to sidestep the spell, knowing it was near impossible to shield against, especially with such a short distance between the two. He did not move enough, however, and he hissed in pain as the spell caught the outside of his left arm. The power of the spell sent him back several feet through the air, and he hit the floor with a loud crack. The spell left a deep cut that leaked an acrid green fluid that caused the flesh around the wound to smoke distastefully. He heard the gasps of surprise from all those that remained and realized he had been left alone. It was now or never. He could deal with the spell damage soon enough. He prepared himself and disappeared in a thick black smoke. "Nobody move," Harry commanded firmly, knowing the Dark Lord was still here. He felt a sudden sharp pain in his head and felt the presence of the Dark Lord in his mind. "You can't beat me, Harry," Voldemort spoke in his mind. "I know branches of magic that you can only dream of," he added, increasing the pressure on the boy's mind. Harry had read a little on possession in one of the books he had taken from Arcturus, and immediately knew what was happening. He tried to think of what it was he should do to counter the attack, which was made much harder as the Dark Lord invaded his mind further. "Big mistake, Tom," Harry said coldly in realization. He forced every ounce of magic into his mind as he thought of his family, of Sirius and Dumbledore. He didn't think of Daphne, knowing that Tom would be aware of her as he would see his thoughts. He focused with all of his might on the love he felt for them and was rewarded with a scream of pain as Voldemort was thrown from his mind and the man appeared in a heap on the floor in front of him. Lord Voldemort knew that it was time to make his exit. He had gotten what he came for after all. He snarled in anger before disappearing once again in a thick cloud of smoke. "Are you okay?" Sirius asked in concern, rushing forward. "I'm fine," Harry assured the man. "Damn, I didn't know you were capable of that," his godfather replied in awe. "I caught him by surprise," Harry explained firmly. "It won't happen again like that," he added knowingly. "Why didn't you kill him?" one of the auras asked in shock. "There are things that you don't understand," Harry said to the man. "It is not as simple as that," he finished, shaking his head. "It's probably because he can't," another one spat in response. Harry was immediately angry and he marched towards the man. I didn't see you trying to fight him, Harry said dangerously, because he would wipe the floor with you, so shut up, you moron, unless you want me to leave him to you, he questioned with a raised eyebrow. No, the man replied, frantically shaking his head. I'm sorry, Lord Potter, he said weakly, clearly intimidated by the teen. Harry spotted the minister who was conversing with Dumbledore, sweating profusely and looking very nervous as indicated by the constant twirling of his patented bowler hat. Harry approached the man and cut him off before he could greet him. I trust you have all the evidence now that he is back, he asked the shaking man. Yes, Fudge sputtered. What the hell were you all doing here? He asked with a frown, looking at Sirius and Arcturus as they joined the group. Your job, Harry responded. Now it seems that you have work to do, Minister. As do I, Harry added dismissively. But you need to tell us what happened, Fudge tried weakly. Ask your auras. They were here as were you. All that matters is that you know he is back. Harry pointed out. It's time to prepare, Minister. No more excuses, he said firmly, removing his portkey. Hogwarts? He asked Dumbledore and the two blacks, who all nodded their agreement. Hogwarts help, they all intoned and disappeared from the Ministry of Magic. The group landed in the hospital wing and were immediately set upon by Madame Pomfrey. What is going on here? She asked the group with her hands firmly on her hips. Potter? She said in realization. I should have known, she added with a tut. She then began waving her wand and muttering at the protesting teen. She's keen. Arcturus stated, a little amused, and coughed a little. I'm too old for this, he mumbled. Poppy is rather passionate, Dumbledore replied, his eyes twinkling once again. You won't escape her care, he informed the man warningly. I think you'll find I will, Arcturus said triumphantly, and removed another portkey and disappeared before the crazed nurse could turn her attention to him. You are fine, Potter, Madame Pomfrey declared in confusion. I told you I was, Harry mumbled irritably. Where did the other one go? She asked Dumbledore, noticing Arcturus was missing. It seems that Baron Black has made other arrangements in regards to his health care, Dumbledore explained with a chuckle. Coward, Harry muttered. Madame Pomfrey huffed in indignation. And what about you, Headmaster? You haven't foolishly injured yourself, have you? She questioned with a raised eyebrow. I'm fine, Dumbledore assured the overzealous matron. Serious? He asked the man, who just shook his head, indicating that he was unharmed. Then please keep the noise down. I have another patient. Pomfrey explained irritably, pointing to the only occupied bed. Harry looked over and immediately recognized the occupant, who was watching the group, clearly surprised by their late-night appearance. Hello, Natalie, Harry greeted the girl with a smile. And what are you doing here? He asked with raised eyebrows. I broke my arm in my flying lesson, the girl explained shyly. I'm not very good, she said sadly. Well, it just so happens that I am very good at flying, Harry replied. How about I will see if we can get you permission over the summer, and I can teach you, he offered, looking at Dumbledore for confirmation. I think that is a wonderful idea. I'm sure it will not be a problem, Dumbledore exclaimed happily, his eyes twinkling merrily. It surprised the man to no end that Harry could be in battle less than a half-hour ago, and now he was sat with a child as though he had not a worry in the world. You would teach me? The girl asked in surprise, to which Harry just nodded and smiled. Thank you, she said gratefully. The conversation was interrupted by a cough coming from Sirius, clearly wanting to be introduced to the girl. Natalie, this is my godfather Sirius Black, Harry explained, gesturing to the man. Sirius, this is Natalie MacDonald, first-year Gryffindor, he added, for the benefit of the man. My lady, Sirius said with a bow and kissed the back of her hand, causing her to giggle and then frown. You smell like a dog we found once, she exclaimed, causing Harry and Dumbledore to laugh. Well, that would be because I can become one, Sirius explained, ignoring the laughing pair. He then transformed into the shaggy black dog and began jumping around playfully, causing the girl to giggle again. I'm going to call you Princess, the girl declared, causing Sirius to whimper in indignation. Harry discreetly conjured a pink bow around the dog's neck and tail, causing the girl to laugh uncontrollably. Seeing the bow on his tail, Sirius growled and began chasing it, irritably attempting to remove the offending garment. Headmaster, this is a hospital wing, Pomfrey cut in, clearly irritated by the antics. "This is no place for animals," she added, pointing at the dog. "Miss MacDonald needs her rest, also, so I must insist you leave." "But I was talking to Harry," the girl said sadly. "How about I come and get you in the morning and I will escort you to the Great Hall for breakfast?" Harry offered the girl, who immediately cheered up. "Really?" she asked disbelievingly. "Yes, please," she said excitedly. Harry looked towards Madame Pomfrey to ensure that it would be okay. "Fine," she agreed. "But for now, get out," she ordered the trio. "Come on, princess," Harry said, beckoning to his godfather, who just growled in response, but followed his godson and the headmaster from the room. "Bye, Harry," Natalie called. "I will see you in the morning." "What is her story?" Harry asked the headmaster as they made their way down the corridor. "I know she lives in an orphanage," he explained, eliciting a sorrowful whimper from his godfather. "Her parents were killed in a car accident when she was only a year old," Dumbledore explained sadly. "She had no other family and has been in the orphanage since," he added. "She was one of the reasons I was hoping you would return to school this year as a prefect," the old man revealed. "She needs someone who understands her plight as she has issues with her confidence. I thought she would be able to relate to you," he finished. Harry pondered what the headmaster had told him about the girl. He remembered clearly how awful he felt growing up, thinking that his parents had died in a car crash, and his heart truly went out to the girl. "Who pays for her education?" he asked sadly. "The school has a fund for those in need," Dumbledore explained. "It is very basic, however, and really not sufficient," he added disappointedly. "There are many who have need of the fund, and it is stretched to its limits every year," he finished, shaking his head. "I'll pay for her education," Harry declared. "And anything else she needs," he added. "I want her to have the best of everything, Professor, and I want to make a donation to the school fund," he finished. "How much would help?" he asked the man, who smiled gratefully. "Tuition fees are 2,000 galleons a year, and brand new supplies cost in the region of 500 galleons per student," he explained. "It is rather a lot of gold," he finished. "Then I will give you 250,000 galleons to start with and add any extra you will need," Harry informed the man. "And I will match it," Sirius declared, transforming back. "I have access to the family vaults. It might as well be put to good use," he explained with a shrug. Dumbledore smiled at the two. "You are very good men," he said sincerely, his eyes welling with tears. "We need more men like you in our world." "I remember what it is like to have nothing, sir," Harry intoned sadly. "I'll help any way I can." The three continued walking through the castle in silence, each lost in their thoughts. Sirius thought of the girl and how awful it must be to be in that position. He hated his family, but he at least had had one growing up. Harry was having similar thoughts and vowed to help her any way he could. He was much too young to do as much as he would like, and had other responsibilities that he needed to focus on. But he would help her as much as he could. He had to admit that he had gotten a soft spot for the young girl who he had shared a few moments with now. Albus Dumbledore was just grateful for his two companions and knew they would be able to make a real difference with their generosity. He just hoped they would both survive so the whole wizarding community could benefit from what they could offer. There was one thing that bothered the man, however. "Harry?" he questioned the teen, snapping him out of his own thoughts. "Why would you give Tom the prophecy?" he asked as they reached the front gates. "What makes you think I did?" Harry asked in reply with a smirk before disapparating away. Dumbledore looked towards Sirius with a confused expression and saw his own feelings reflected on the man's face. "Don't ask me," Sirius said, holding his hands up to demonstrate his innocence. "I had no part in that," he explained. Sirius disapparated soon after, leaving a thoughtful headmaster in his wake. Dumbledore just shook his head. "All will be revealed soon, I imagine," he said, shaking his head once more. "Break." Lord Voldemort arrived back in the drawing room of Malfoy Manor. He quickly healed the spell damage caused by Potter. It would cause him some discomfort for a while, there was no doubt. The boy had surprised him with his knowledge of that spell. At first he didn't believe what he was hearing until it was too late. He quickly summoned a pain relief potion to ease the throbbing in his head and downed it in one. He took a moment to allow the potion to take effect before he looked around the room at his expectant followers and saw a significant number was missing. 11 empty spaces he counted, much to his annoyance. Bella was there, as was Lucius, Rudolphus, Rookwood and Raoul. Rabistan, Avery and Mulciber were the most noticeable absences. But all of the missing were a great loss to the Dark Lord. They were among his most capable and loyal followers. He shook his head. He had gotten what he wanted, so that took the sting away from his losses somewhat. "Leave," he commanded those in the room irritably. He wanted to be alone. The room emptied quickly, and the Dark Lord removed the orb from his pocket and tapped it with his wand and waited expectantly. A voice sounded and immediately made him furious. "You really thought I would just hand you what you wanted, Tom?" The voice of Harry Potter sounded around the room, laughing darkly after his statement. "Fuck you, Tom. I look forward to the next time, because it will be your last. Remember, I know your secrets, all 7 of them." The voice finished knowingly. The orb grew hot and exploded, launching the Dark Lord across the room, causing him to crash into the wall with a loud grunt. As Lord Voldemort laid on the floor in a heap, he realized something. He had been outwitted by Harry Potter. He was overcome with a sense of fear. It was Potter. The boy knew about his Horcruxes. He would have to be careful from now on and protect Nagini with his life. For the first time in his many years, Tom Riddle was truly scared, a feeling that did not sit well with him. He screamed in rage as he got to his feet and blew a hole in the wall in his fury. He needed to come up with a plan. He needed some time. He had lost his men for nothing and exposed himself to the world. The Dark Lord needed to bolster his numbers and take stock of his situation. He needed to be much more careful and not underestimate Harry Potter in future. "You win this one, Potter," he spat in anger. Ever since the death of his mother, sister and the Lovegood girl, Bill Weasley had been in a near catatonic state. He barely ate, barely slept, and barely showered. He simply sat still, lost in his own thoughts. He pondered his workmanship on the wards surrounding his family home to the point of questioning his own expertise. He wrote down every ward he had placed from beginning to end, the order in which he had weaved them, and every other detail he could think of, and could come up with no reason why they would fail, how they did. Regardless of who by or how many times he was told that he was not to blame, that was the only conclusion he could fathom. He must have made a mistake somewhere. He must have done something to cause them to attack the people within them. He was not aware of any spell, no implement that could have such consequences on wards, and if Bill Weasley knew one thing, it was wards. He was excellent with them, far beyond the ability of most wizards and even most goblins, yet he had clearly made an error within his scheme. He was sat in his family home, clutching a letter he had just received from his younger twin brothers. A possible saving grace, if you will. He shook uncontrollably from the emotion he was feeling, and for his own sake and sanity he hoped and prayed that what they had written was true. His shaking turned into sobbing, but even he could not give a reason as to why he cried the way he was. Relief, perhaps, but in all likelihood it was the vast range of emotions he was experiencing at one time that caused this effect. He simply fell to the floor, crying and laughing simultaneously until he vomited. He would not take the word of this letter as gospel, but it had ignited a spark of hope within the man. He needed to confirm it. He needed to know the truth. "Harry," he whispered hoarsely, shaking his head. He had to speak to the young man, but he first needed to pull himself together. He needed a few decent meals and some rest. He needed to be alert and coherent if he was to believe. He even knew himself that in his state he would listen to no man, even one as honest as Harry Potter. Bill's last thoughts were with his mother and sister before he simply lost consciousness. His body and mind could not cope with the neglect anymore. He needed sleep, and that letter had given him respite enough to allow it to come. Break. Harry Potter awoke feeling more carefree than he had in a very long time. He had managed to expose Tom and even made a fool of him with the fake prophecy he had given. He wished more than anything that he could have seen him listening to it and the aftermath of the spell he had placed on the orb. He chuckled despite himself at how angry he knew the man would be. Harry, however, was not naive. He knew he had been quite fortunate in the encounter and had surprised Riddle. He knew it would not happen that way again. Tom would no longer underestimate him and would learn from his mistake. Maybe he had never shown any signs that he had learnt from his previous ones. He continued to goad the teen and underestimate him time and time again. Maybe he was just that foolish. He was proud of how well he fought the man. The power and the speed had taken him by surprise, but he did manage to adjust and knew that he fought better than anyone else could have. It gave him the first glance of real hope that he could in fact win, but that did not mean he slack or become negligent in his training. He knew they were well matched and he had to keep improving and keep working on every aspect of his ability to get better. He had already vowed many times that that is what he would do, but he reaffirmed it once more. He pulled himself from his bed to prepare for the day. He had, after all, promised a young girl that he would take her to breakfast. He also remembered his promise of a donation to Dumbledore, and he drew up the bank draft to give to the headmaster when he saw him. He showered, dressed and made sure he had everything he needed. He decided that he would use the portkey that he still had from the previous night to take him directly to the hospital wing. He could also return that to Dumbledore this morning. Hogwarts help, he mumbled, gripping the necklace, and disappeared with the familiar jerking sensation around his stomach. He appeared in the hospital wing, immediately faced by a very stern-looking and disapproving Madame Pomfrey, who frowned at his sudden arrival. "I do not appreciate intrusions like this, Mr. Potter," the witch informed him with her hands on her hips. "This is a hospital, not an arrival point," she added. "But if I couldn't get here this quick, how would I receive the medical attention of your delicate and caring hands? I have been your most frequent patient of the last few years, haven't I?" he questioned. The matron frowned at him further, but he could see a slight tug at the corner of her lips, which turned into a reluctant smile from the no-nonsense woman. "Away with you," she commanded, shooing him towards the bed of the first year, who was giggling at the conversation between the two. "Hello, Natalie," Harry said, greeting the girl. "And how are you this morning?" he asked. "Hello, Harry," the girl returned brightly. "I'm all better now. How are you?" she added. "Well," Harry began, scratching his chin. "I am quite tired. I was up all night counting down the minutes until I could come back and take you for breakfast," he explained seriously. The young girl just giggled at the boy. "Don't lie to me, Harry Potter," she replied. "You have crusty bits in your eyes," she said, pointing at his face. Harry immediately rubbed his eyes and found nothing. He looked at the girl and frowned. "You tricked me," he stated. "It looks like I will have to keep an eye on you. Are you ready?" he asked her. "Yep," the girl responded simply and stood holding out her hand. "You have to escort me properly," she insisted. "Of course, my lady," Harry answered with a bow and took her hand as requested. The two made their way through the castle towards the Great Hall, meeting no student on the way. Clearly everyone was already at breakfast. They could hear the chatter as they approached, and as they entered, all talking ceased immediately. Harry found himself faced with hundreds of faces showing looks of shock and awe. "I didn't know you had that effect on people," he whispered to his young companion. "They're looking at you," the girl replied shyly. Before he could respond, he was cut off by a very angry voice. "Harry James Potter," a familiar female screamed at him. He turned and saw a very angry blonde marching towards him from the Slytherin table. "Uh-oh," he said in realization. "Are you in trouble, Harry?" Natalie asked him worriedly. "You know, I think I might be," he mused aloud. "Hello, Daphne," he said, greeting the girl. "Don't you hello Daphne me, you prat," the girl retorted heatedly. "What is this?" she hissed at him, waving a copy of the Daily Prophet under his nose. "A newspaper," Harry replied dumbly. "I know it is a newspaper, you idiot." The girl responded angrily and hit him with the object. "I meant this," she added, unfolding the paper so he could read the headline. "Potter vs. you-know-who in Ministry Showdown. He's back." Underneath the headline was a picture of the two dueling. Harry could see himself launching Riddle across the room with his spell, and he had to admit it did look quite impressive. "Ah," he uttered, not sure what else to say. "Ah?" Daphne questioned. "Is that all you have to say?" she asked further and began hitting him with the paper again. "Of all the reckless and irresponsible things you could do," she growled, continuing her onslaught. "But I told you," Harry tried weakly, attempting to defend himself from the furious girl. Everyone in the room was in shock at the girl's reaction. The boy had just duelled the Dark Lord and won, yet she was completely undeterred by this. Harry thought he was about to be saved as he saw Dumbledore rise to his feet to seemingly intervene. The headmaster, however, was stopped in his tracks by a firm hand on his forearm and a glare from his deputy. It seemed Harry was not the only one facing the ire of an angry woman this morning. "You did," Daphne agreed, "but I did not expect a full bloody battle in the Ministry." "What the hell were you thinking, Potter?" she asked angrily. Harry said, trying to formulate a good answer. "You weren't thinking, were you?" she questioned the dumbstruck boy. "You could have been killed," she shouted. "I'm sorry," he tried. He was more frightened now of the angry blonde than he had been Tom last night. That thought reminded him of his grandfather and what he said the day he fought Goliath about being more afraid of his grandmother. Harry had to fight the grin that threatened to break across his face with everything he had. He knew it would only make her angrier. "Oh, you will be sorry," Daphne promised. "If you ever do anything as stupid and reckless as that again, the Dark Lord will be the least of your problems. Get it?" she asked, poking him firmly in the chest. Harry himself was in shock by her reaction and had not expected to be chided how he had been. He must have really upset her to cause this, and he did feel a little guilty, even though he knew he had done the right thing. "Got it," he replied in a subdued voice. "Can I get some breakfast now?" he asked. "I did promise Natalie I'd have it with her," he finished. Daphne looked at him critically for a moment before responding. "You clearly can't be trusted to supervise a young girl alone," Daphne stated simply. "Not until you are responsible enough to not be such a prat," she declared. "Come on, Natalie," she said to the girl, offering her hand, who took it and shot a sorrowful look towards the older boy. The two began walking off when Daphne turned to Harry once more. "You can join us," she told him. "Merlin knows you can't be trusted by yourself." Harry followed the two girls to the Slytherin table and was surprised that no one protested at his presence. He guessed that it had a lot to do with the article and that none would want to challenge him. He looked towards the Gryffindor table to see a pair of red-headed twins looking towards him and laughing. Harry grinned as he saw them both be swatted by Alicia and Angelina respectively for their insensitivity. He turned back towards his present company and came across the very amused faces of Tracy and Astoria. "Hello, Tracy," he greeted. "Potter," she said with a nod, still grinning. "Good morning, Astoria," he added to the other girl. "Hello, Harry," she replied, her eyes full of mirth. "Is she always like this?" he questioned the pair with a whisper. "Never," Astoria answered, shaking her head. "It seems that is reserved for you and Dad once when he forgot his and Mum's anniversary," she informed him. "What happened?" Harry asked curiously. "She turned his hair pink every day for 2 weeks." Astoria answered casually. "I can hear you," Daphne cut in. "And Harry will get worse than pink hair for a couple of weeks if he does something like that again," she told them. Harry grimaced at the thought. He did not like an angry Daphne Greengrass, even though she did look very beautiful in a rage, he mused to himself. The glint in her blue eyes definitely had his attention. He would have to remember that as a warning sign. Although he was around 6 inches taller than her and had at least 5 stone in weight advantage, her anger was not something he wanted to provoke again. Daphne saw him staring at her and just frowned at the boy. She was angrier that he had gotten that kind of response from her than what he had actually done. She knew things like this were going to happen that she had no control over, but it had truly worried her that it had happened the way it had. The boy could have been hurt or killed and he didn't seem all that concerned by it. He needed to understand that his actions affect other people, especially those that care for him. Harry saw Dumbledore leaving the hall and remembered that he needed to talk to the man, so made his way over, watched by every student in the hall. "Professor," he called to the old man. "Ah, Harry, it is nice that you could join us for breakfast," Dumbledore greeted him with a smile. "I just wanted to return this," Harry said quietly, handing him the portkey he had been given the night before. "Hold on to it, Harry," Dumbledore replied, pushing the necklace back towards the boy. "You never know when it may come in handy," he added knowingly. "Thank you, sir," Harry said gratefully. "Oh, and there was this also," he added, handing him the bank draft he had drawn up. "This is most generous of you and many in this room will benefit from it." the headmaster explained appreciatively. He opened the parchment and was taken aback by what he read. "This is double what you initially offered," he stated, confusedly. "I have more money than I will ever spend." Harry shrugged. "And the way things are, I might never get a chance to spend any of it," he continued, a little sadly. "In the event things go badly, I have made arrangements for the school to receive annual donations from my wealth, so that it will always have funds available, and you have more money on its way from the sale of some artifacts found in a very hidden place in the school," he informed the man. Dumbledore was overcome with emotion by the generosity and decency of the young man in front of him. Despite how terrible his life had been, he had become one of the best men he had ever known. "Hidden room, you say?" Dumbledore mused, scratching his chin. "I think you came across it filled with chamber pots at one time," Harry said with a grin. "Ah, that hidden room," the headmaster acknowledged with a nod. Harry returned the nod. "And remember what I said about Natalie, sir," he added. Dumbledore smiled and placed his hands on the young man's shoulders. "The world rarely sees men such as you, Harry," he said sincerely. "I can't speak for anyone else, but I couldn't be any prouder of you, and I am sure your parents would feel the same," he finished, giving the teen's shoulder a squeeze. "I do try, sir," Harry responded. He leaned in so he could talk a little quieter. "Do you have any idea on how to deal with an angry woman?" he asked, half-jokingly. Dumbledore chuckled in amusement. "I always find that if you are quiet and simply nod at the right moment, the storm usually passes much quicker," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Is that so?" The irritated voice of Professor McGonagall cut in, causing Dumbledore to physically cringe. "I was just offering Harry some of my years of wisdom," he replied innocently to the irritated deputy headmistress. The woman intoned disapprovingly. "It doesn't seem that your wisdom stretches far enough to look over your shoulder before offering advice on the opposite sex," she said casually. Dumbledore cringed again at the tone. "Come along, Albus," McGonagall instructed, taking the man by the arm. "We still have a conversation to have about your reckless adventure with Mr. Potter and co." She informed him as she started leading him away. "And you can explain to the Phoenix why he was left here while you risked your life, you foolish man," she finished sternly. "Come now, Minerva, be reasonable," Dumbledore pleaded. "You know he is difficult at the best of times," he pointed out. "You should have thought of that before you went gallivanting," she responded in a no-nonsense tone. "And people ask why I never married," the headmaster mumbled petulantly. "Yet I may as well be," he added with a chuckle. "Excuse me?" McGonagall questioned as they left the hall and disappeared from sight. Harry stifled his laughter at the headmaster's plight and returned to his seat to continue his breakfast. "Don't think you're off the hook yet, Potter," Daphne said as he sat down, not even looking at him. As she spoke, "We will be having a conversation too," she added with a glare. Harry swallowed hard and nodded. He wasn't sure if he was envious of Dumbledore in this moment, having to deal with McGonagall and a phoenix instead of the angry blonde he was currently sat with. Break. Marlene McKinnon was making breakfast after a long and nervous night. She had been worried about Sirius from the moment he left until he returned and told her that the plan had gone off without a hitch. She was relieved beyond words and was just grateful that the lovable rogue had come back to her. She sat down and began eating her toast when a tap on the window indicated the arrival of the newspaper. She retrieved it and sat back down to finish her meal when she caught sight of the headline and the subsequent image on the cover. Upon reading it, her eyes turned a dangerous shade of amber and she growled throatily in anger. She shot to her feet and stalked towards the staircase. Her fiancé had a few questions to answer, and they had better be good answers. "Sirius, or Rayan Black?" she screamed from the foot of the stairs and began stomping up them. Break. Sirius was woken by a tone of voice he had not heard in many years, and he knew he was in trouble for something. An angry Marlene was never a good thing for him, and he immediately looked for a suitable hiding place to wait her anger out. He panicked as he heard the furious footsteps getting closer and realized he was cornered. There was nowhere for him to go. In a moment of childish foolery, he simply pulled the duvet over his head and feigned sleep, hoping that she wouldn't want to wake a sleeping man. When he would reflect on this moment later, he would realize how naive he had been. He couldn't control the nervous shudder that had taken over his body and completely stiffened from fear as the door of the bedroom burst open. All he could hear for a few seconds was the heavy and labored breathing of the woman he loved before he was unceremoniously struck by a powerful stinging hex on his behind. He let out a very dog-like yelp as he jumped in the air and landed back on the bed with a thump. In front of him stood a very angry woman with bright orange angry eyes that made him cringe involuntarily. "Without a hitch?" she questioned him rhetorically. "What the hell is this?" she asked, throwing the paper at the man who picked it up and read the front page. "Well, it worked," he stated flatly. "I don't give a shit if it worked," the woman hissed at him. "You said you were going to bring him out in the open, not start a bloody battle, you idiot," she shouted, firing another hex at the man who dived to the floor and attempted to crawl under the bed. "Oh no you don't," Marlene shouted and got him with another stinging hex. "Will you stop doing that?" Sirius shouted, extracting the top half of himself he had managed to get under the bed back out. "I have sensitive skin, it will welt for days," he whined. "I'll give you sensitive skin," Marlene said threateningly. "Well?" she asked with her hands on her hips. "Well what?" Sirius asked dumbly. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. "Well, I didn't know it would go like that," Sirius pointed out. "But you had an idea," Marlene stated simply. "Well, when he turned up it all just kicked off," Sirius explained with a shrug. "We are all fine, none of us got hurt, and as you can see Harry kicked his ass and I got one of the Lestrangers," he finished. "It doesn't change the fact that you are all idiots." Marlene replied. "You had better tell me when things like this happen or you are going into something dangerous," she said firmly. "I will from now on," Sirius promised. "I'm sorry, do you forgive me?" he asked hopefully. "Not yet," Marlene responded. "You had better start working on a damn good apology." "Sirius Black, or you will be sleeping in a kennel for the rest of your life," she informed him seriously. Marlene left the room, leaving a very cowed Sirius Black in her wake. Sirius just shook his head and rubbed his throbbing bottom. "That really is going to bruise quite badly," he mumbled with a pout. Break. Jonathan Greengrass woke in his usual fashion. He showered, dressed, and got ready to open the shop. He made his way to the kitchen for breakfast and to spend some time with his wife before they both left to get on with their respective days. "Hello, dear," he said, hugging her from behind and placing a kiss on her cheek. "Good morning," Ophelia replied tiredly. "Busy day?" she asked, taking her seat at the table. "Not so much," Jonathan said with a shake of his head while pouring his coffee. "Just some auditing and making a list of some ingredients I need to get on my next trip out," he explained. He took a sip of his coffee as he unrolled the morning newspaper and immediately sprayed the coffee from his mouth all over his unsuspecting wife, covering her in the brown liquid and some spittle. "You better have a damn good reason for spitting at me, Jonathan Greengrass," Ophelia said dangerously, wiping her face with a napkin, her bright blue eyes glinting dangerously. Jonathan just gaped momentarily at the paper before snapping out of his stupor and pushing it towards his furious wife. "Oh dear," she said simply after reading the article. "It is rather an impressive photo," she added, waving her wand over herself to clean the mess. "I don't think Daphne will be impressed though," she said knowingly. "She is going to kill him," Jonathan said a little gleefully. "He has no idea what he has done." "Jonathan Greengrass," Ophelia intoned warningly. "Well, the boy is hardly going to be intimidated by me," Jonathan whined, pointing at the photo. "I have to be content knowing that Daphne takes after you," he explained. "Meaning?" Ophelia asked with a raised eyebrow. "That you are willing to put me back on track when I stray onto a foolish path," he answered diplomatically. "Jonathan, we have been married for over 15 years, don't try and butter me up," Ophelia stated. "What did you really mean?" she asked. Jonathan took a deep breath. This type of honesty would either go very well or very badly. He knew he had no choice. He had to explain himself, or his wife would just assume the worst, and he didn't even see this as a bad thing. It was actually one of the things he loved about the woman. "Well," he began carefully, "mostly you are quiet and the most loving and caring person I know," he continued. "But when you lose your temper you're like some kind of terrifying beast," he added reluctantly. "And Daphne is just like you," he finished. See, that wasn't so hard, was it? Ophelia asked sweetly after a moment's silence. Jonathan breathed a sigh of relief that he wasn't getting a tongue lashing. Ophelia stood and placed a kiss on her husband's cheek. But if you dare say that again, you will spend many nights on the sofa, she informed him casually, and left the room. Jonathan cringed at that. The few times over the years he had been banished to the sofa had not been pleasant. He was convinced that his wife cursed it to make it purposely uncomfortable. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into, Harry," he mumbled, shaking his head. "I heard that," he heard his wife shout from the next room. Jonathan cringed again and stayed silent. He knew he was already pushing his luck. A stop for flowers and chocolate on the way home was in order to placate the woman. He just needed to work out how much he would need to appease her. Break. Harry managed to finish his breakfast without further provoking the ire of the still annoyed teen sat next to him, something he was thankful for. He could see that both Tracy and Astoria were simply waiting to see what would happen next between the two, and were unusually quiet, but had clear looks of amusement and anticipation. "Would you like to come for a walk around the lake?" he asked Natalie, who had been rather subdued and silent throughout the meal. "You can come too if you don't trust me, not to influence her with my recklessness," he added to Daphne, who had looked at him with a raised eyebrow questioningly. "You can count on it, Potter," Daphne replied, narrowing her eyes at him. "Okay," Natalie answered, simply looking between the two with concern. "And what about us?" Astoria cut in. "No," Daphne said vehemently as she stood and helped the younger girl to her feet. Astoria huffed and folded her arms indignantly. The trio exited the castle into the sunny grounds and walked towards the lake in silence, with Daphne holding their younger companion's hand. After around 10 minutes of walking, they reached the opposite bank of the lake, and Harry paused, looking to the other side, lost in thought. He knew that the conversation with the young girl was sensitive, and he did not want to upset her by bringing up bad memories or inadvertently insulting her. He sat on one of the rocks on the shoreline and gestured for her to join him. Natalie approached, looking both confused and a little nervous. "Can you promise that you won't be upset with me until you've heard what I have to say?" Harry asked the girl, who nodded with a frown. Daphne's expression mirrored that of the younger girl, but she let him proceed. "Do you remember telling me that you were an orphan?" he questioned her quietly. Natalie nodded. "Yes," she answered shyly. This was news to Daphne, who had no idea. She felt saddened for the young girl and put a supporting arm around her shoulder. "Well, I asked Professor Dumbledore about you," Harry informed her. "Why?" Natalie asked, in confusion. "I wanted to know more about you," Harry stated simply. "Did you know that I am an orphan too?" he questioned. Natalie just shook her head in reply. "Well, until I was 11 years old, I thought my parents were killed in a car crash. That was what I was told," he explained to the girl. A look of recognition overcame the girl and her lips started to tremble. "I didn't know the truth until I found out I was a wizard," he continued. "My parents were murdered by that man you saw me fighting in the paper," he added in explanation. "Why are you telling me this?" Natalie asked quietly. Harry breathed deeply before replying. "Because I want you to know that I understand what you are going through," he said. "And I want to help you. That's why I am going to be paying for your education and anything else you need. I want to look after you in any way I can," he explained further. "I can't take you away from the orphanage permanently, but I can make everything else easier," he finished sincerely. "Why would you do that?" she asked skeptically. "What's in it for you? People don't do things like that for nothing," she added with a frown. "The only thing in it for me is knowing that you are happy," Harry said simply. "And because I remember how it feels," he continued. "I spent my whole life wishing that someone would care for me, would rescue me from the hell I grew up in," he added sadly. "Do you know about my life?" he asked her. Natalie shook her head. "After my parents were killed, I was sent to live with my aunt, uncle, and cousin, and they hate magic," he began bitterly. "They hated my parents, and they hated me. They treated me worse than a house elf. Every day I was made to do chores, cook, clean, garden, and anything else you can think of. They barely fed me enough to live on, and I never had anything of my own," he continued. They beat me and they always told me I was nothing but a worthless freak. I spent the first 10 years there living in a cupboard under the stairs, even though they had enough bedrooms," he finished, breathing deeply again. Both Natalie and Daphne looked horrified at his explanation of his life. "I never had anyone who cared about me," he continued. "That was what I wanted more than anything," he said with a shake of his head. "Just someone to be proud of me and be there for me when I needed it, as every child should have. That's why I want to be there for you, just so you know someone cares about you and will look after you," he explained to the girl. "There's nothing else in it for me," he finished sincerely. Natalie flung herself into his arms, much to his surprise, and began sobbing. Harry just held her and comforted her as best he could. He chanced to look at Daphne and could see that she was crying silently. He opened his other arm to the blonde, and she fell into it at his invitation. The trio stayed this way for several moments until Natalie slowly extracted herself from the pair. "Do you mean it?" she whispered at the older boy. "I really mean it," Harry answered with a smile. "Here," he said, handing the girl a necklace he removed from his pocket. It was a simple silver chain with a red ruby on it. Natalie hesitantly took the piece of jewelry and just admired it. "Why would you give me this?" she asked. "It is very special," Harry answered the girl. "It belonged to my grandmother," he explained. "She was a very special lady and my grandfather gave her this. It has some very useful spells on it," he said with a nod. "What spells?" the young girl asked. "Well," Harry began, "it will protect you from most minor curses, but the really useful one is a connection spell," he informed her. Natalie looked confused, so Harry continued. "It is connected to me, so if you ever need me, then you just hold the stone in your hand and think of me and I will come," he explained. Natalie just stared at the chain in awe. "You'd do that for me?" she questioned disbelievingly. "Of course," Harry answered with a smile. "That is what I am here for." "Thank you, Harry," Natalie said sincerely and hugged him again. "You're welcome," Harry responded with a small smile. Daphne pulled herself away from Harry and just stared at him, her eyes still full of tears. "You prat," she mumbled at him, shaking her head. "What did I do now?" he asked incredulously. "How can I stay mad at you when you do things like that?" she asked with a pout. "You can't," Harry said with a grin. "But I did it for her," he added with a nod towards the younger girl. Daphne nodded and smiled softly at him. "How are you such a good person after everything?" she questioned him gently and ran a hand down his cheek. "I'm not perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes," Harry said flatly. "I just remember that feeling of wanting to be saved, and it didn't happen until Arcturus came along," he added with a shake of his head. "No one is perfect, Harry," Daphne replied. "That doesn't mean that you aren't an amazing person," she added. "You really care about that miserable git, don't you?" she asked him. Harry chuckled at her description of the older man. "You've noticed that about him then," he stated. "But yeah, despite the fact that he is a miserable git, as you so eloquently put, I do care about him. He was there for me when I needed it most and gave me what I have now," he explained to the girl. "I will always be grateful to him for everything he has done," he added sincerely. The three of them spent the remainder of the morning by the lake, just talking and having fun. Harry even taught the two some useful spells that would come in handy if the need ever arose. As lunchtime approached, Harry began escorting them to the castle. They were almost at the door when they were interrupted by the arrival of a house elf. "Elgar?" Harry asked in confusion. "Master Potter, sir," the elf addressed Harry in a panic. "Lord Black is sick, sir, and he needs your help," the frantic elf explained. "Take me to him," Harry requested, his happy demeanor immediately vanishing. The elf grabbed hold of Harry by the arm and the two disappeared. Daphne saw that Natalie was looking really concerned, so she placed an arm around her shoulder. "I'm sure he will be okay," she said reassuringly as she led the younger girl into the castle. Break. Harry arrived in the drawing room along with Elgar to find Arcturus barely conscious and slumped over his desk, looking very pale, his breathing heavy and labored. He rushed to his side and tried to rouse the man, who just looked up at him and babbled incoherently. "What happened?" Harry asked the elf. "He was just coughing, sir, and fell like that," the elf explained worriedly. Harry just nodded and reached into his shirt to remove his Hogwarts portkey. He grabbed Arcturus by the shoulder. "Hogwarts, help," he said desperately, knowing the need to get the older man help was dire. The pair arrived in the hospital wing, with Harry having to pick the man up in his arms to prevent him from falling. It was then that Harry realized just how old Arcturus was. He felt very light in his arms, and for the first time Harry saw him as vulnerable, something he hadn't even considered. Instead of the usual full of energy, aged man that would usually be in front of him was an elderly man cradled in his arms, nothing more than sick and needy, as many older people found themselves. "Madame Pomfrey," Harry shouted for the healer. "I told you to keep the noise down in here, Potter," Madame Pomfrey said, irritable as she came from her office. "Oh?" she intoned as she saw the older man in his arms. "What happened?" she asked, now in full healer mode. "I don't know," Harry answered weakly. "His elf came and got me. He was coughing and just ended up like this," he explained. "Put him on the bed," Pomfrey instructed. Harry did as he was told and stood back to let the healer do her job. He was scared for the older man, a feeling he had never felt except for when Hermione had been paralyzed in their second year. Madame Pomfrey began waving her wand over the older man, trying to determine what was wrong with him. She frowned at the diagnostic results and shook her head sadly. "He's been cursed," she said simply. "I don't know what it is, but I can ease some of the symptoms," she explained. Harry released his wand and sent off 2 separate patronuses. Madame Pomfrey began administering potions to the older man, and after a few minutes the door to the hospital wing opened, and in came Albus Dumbledore, looking very concerned. "What happened?" he asked Harry gravely. Harry explained what he knew to the old man, who just nodded sadly. "I see," he replied. He then stepped forward and began waving his wand over the man, mumbling in several languages, many that Harry did not recognize. During this process, the doors opened once again to admit a very confused and concerned-looking Sirius, who just looked at Harry, clearly wanting an explanation, which the teen gave. "It is a curse of Nordic origins," Dumbledore informed the duo. "We need Severus immediately. Curses are his forte," he explained, and sent of his Patronus to fetch the man. It was a long and worrisome 10 minutes before the potions master entered the room, looking his usual surly self. He sneered at the presence of Harry and Sirius before addressing the headmaster. "This had better be important, Albus." "I was busy," he said grumpily. "Baron Black has been cursed," Dumbledore informed the man. "I was hoping you could shine some light on the matter." Snape just huffed and approached the heavily breathing man and began waving his wand over him, mumbling in a similar fashion to Dumbledore. "Nordic," he said neutrally after a moment, and raised his eyebrows. "It is a conversion curse," he continued. "It turns oxygen into carbon monoxide, something muggles die of from exposure to because of some of their foolish devices," he explained. "Can you reverse it?" Sirius asked the man reluctantly. "It is too late," Snape answered, shaking his head. "Had we gotten to him sooner, he could have been saved without the counter," he continued. "The curse has done irreparable damage, and it can't be undone. His organs are starving and failing," he finished with a shrug. Harry and Sirius shared a look before Harry spoke. "Who?" he asked. The mean simply. "Who just looked at him casually." "This would be one of the Lestrange curses," he answered. "I have seen Rudolphus and Rabuston use this before," he explained. "Rudolphus," Sirius growled angrily. "I killed Rabuston as soon as the fight started," he told the other 3. "So there's nothing we can do?" Harry asked disbelievingly. Snape just shook his head. "We can alleviate some of the symptoms and take any pain away. That is the best we can do." Madame Pomfrey cut in sadly. "Do what you can," Harry instructed quietly, and sat in the chair next to the bed, lost in thought. Sirius took the seat on the other side of the bed. "Lestrange," Harry hissed angrily, his magic reacting to his mood. He shared a look with Sirius, and they both nodded knowingly at each other. Break. Bellatrix Lestrange was sat in a living room in Malfoy Manor with her younger sister absent-mindedly twirling her wand through her hair as Narcissa rambled on about something inconsequential. She was thinking about her grandfather, a man she had not seen in many years, a man she had believed dead for some time. It seemed that no one saw fit to inform her that the man was still alive, including her sister. The duo was interrupted by the arrival of Rudolphus, who was in a towering rage. He slammed the door as he entered and simply glared at the two while breathing heavily. Bellatrix ignored her husband. He was nothing more than a simpleton, a moron at best. "I'm going to fucking murder that cousin of yours," he roared angrily, pointing at his wife, who just raised an eyebrow in his direction. "You'll do nothing of the sort, Rudy," she told him casually, but there was an undertone of danger to her voice. "He killed my brother, you whore," he screamed. "I'm going to gut him like a fucking fish," he proclaimed, making a clumsily violent gesture with his hand. "You will touch no member of my family," Bellatrix hissed threateningly. "Your brother was an idiot and got what he deserved," she added. Rodolphus grinned triumphantly. "I already got that old bastard grandfather of yours," he boasted smugly. "You did what?" Bellatrix questioned casually while Narcissa looked on in concern. "Cursed the old shit in the back while you were playing with him," Rudolphus informed proudly, not sensing the danger. As quick as a flash, Bellatrix had her wand pointed at her husband. "Crucio!" she screeched in fury. Rodolphus screamed in pain under his wife's curse and fell in a heap, twitching and jerking uncontrollably. "You dare raise a wand towards my family?" she questioned the man who was screaming still. "Bella, stop!" Narcissa tried. "We don't know what he did," she added. Bellatrix reluctantly lifted the curse and glared at the man. "What did you do to my grandfather?" she hissed. Yes, she had tried to curse the man herself, but only half-heartedly. She only used family magic against him, spells he could defend against with ease. She didn't want to cause him harm, she just wanted him to leave her alone. "My grandfather's curse," Rudolphus answered hoarsely with a grimace. "Crucio!" Bellatrix screamed again at the answer she had received. "You dare, you filthy pig! You dare attack a member of the Black family with your unworthy magic! I should kill you right now," she screeched, her eyes ablaze with fury. "I'm your husband," Rudolphus gritted out through the pain. Bellatrix lifted the curse once more and looked at her husband with disgust. "Through a marriage I never wanted," she spat bitterly. "Why do you think I never let you share my bed, you vile creature? I would rather lie with a half-blood," she finished venomously. Rudolphus just gaped at his wife in shock and could find no words to say. "Speaking of half-bloods, I think I will leave you for Potter to kill," Bellatrix said gleefully. "He and my grandfather are very close, according to Sissy. You are already a dead man," she added with a cackle. "Oh, Rudy, Potter is going to tear you limb from limb," she goaded him in a sing-song voice. "And I will watch and enjoy the show," she informed him with another cackle. "I'll rip that little bastard's head off," Rudolphus roared in anger. "Ha!" Bellatrix exclaimed. "You did see him duel the Dark Lord, did you not?" she asked the man. "I thought I would get a go at him, but even I am not so foolish," she said sincerely. Rudolphus looked murderous at his wife's words, but before he could speak, Bellatrix continued. "Now Potter," she mused, "is a real man," she said, biting her lip and playing with her hair. "If he wasn't a half-blood, then he would be worthy of a witch like me," she added confidently. "He's powerful, he's very handsome, and I bet he knows how to use his wand," she finished, licking her lips. "Bella," Narcissa tried reprimanding her sister. "Oh, come on, Sissy. You've seen him up close, you know what I mean. Don't tell me you wouldn't want some fun with him," Bellatrix replied with a raised eyebrow. Narcissa began to sputter incoherently. "He's the same age as my son," she responded weakly. "Then he will have a lot of stamina," Bellatrix returned, her eyes alight with excitement. "I'm going to kill that prick," Rudolphus shouted, getting to his feet and leaving the room in a rage. "Go get him, Rudy," Bellatrix said quietly with a girly giggle. "What do we do about grandfather?" Narcissa asked, clearly unsure. "Can you find him?" Bellatrix asked. "I think so," Narcissa answered. "Okay," Bellatrix began as she went to the table and pulled some parchment towards her. "This is the counter-curse," she informed her sister while she wrote. "And this is a note for Potter," she added in amusement. "For his eyes only," she said firmly, sealing the note with a tap of her wand. "I haven't done anything to it," she finished sincerely. You better not. He will kill me if I try to give him something cursed. Narcissa said knowingly. Find him quickly. Bellatrix instructed her younger sister. Narcissa nodded and left the room. Bellatrix laid on the sofa and continued twirling her hair with her wand, humming a casual tune. Break. It had been 3 days since Harry had disappeared with the elf, and Daphne had not seen him since. He had sent her a message informing her that things weren't looking good and that she needed to focus on her Ojo. He wished her luck and told her that he would let her know any developments. She was worried about the boy knowing how much he cared for the man, but she took his advice and busied herself with her last-minute revision and preparations. She had little doubt that she would do well, especially with the extra tutelage she had had from Harry. So far the exams and practicals had been relatively easy for her, and she was grateful for the advice she had been given by the boy. She had managed all the extra credit sections and even performed extra spells. One of her examiners asked if she knew Harry and told the girl that he had assessed him personally and was still suffering from disbelief at the young man's ability. There were only a few of the exams left, and then she could relax again for the summer, something she definitely needed after this year. She just hoped that Harry would be able to spend some time with her over the holidays. She knew it would be a very long few months without him if she didn't see him. That was something she did not want to think about. Despite her earlier confusion and conclusions about the boy, she had to admit he had more than proved her wrong. She was becoming painfully fond of him now, something she never thought she would be capable of with anyone, let alone Harry Potter. All she could do was wait and see what would come and deal with it as it did and hope that it would all fall into place. How she wanted it to. She just wanted Harry to be happy and safe. She wanted him to have the peace he wanted more than anything, but not at the expense of his life. That would not do. She wanted his happiness to be with her, and she would do everything she could to make that happen. Break. Harry and Sirius had spent most of the past 3 days in the hospital wing with Arcturus, each leaving to fetch clean clothes and a shower respectively. Arcturus's condition was slowly getting worse as time went by, but he was comfortable at least and experiencing no pain. He had his moments of consciousness and clarity, but slept mostly. He only woke to request that the family gather to discuss things, so Ted, Andromeda and Tonks had also been present most of the 3rd day waiting for the man to wake. It was just before dinner when the man came to and saw those gathered around him. "Good," he said weakly. "We have things to talk about," he informed them as seriously as possible. "I need to talk to Potter and Sirius alone first," he explained to the other 3, who left immediately to give them privacy. Harry and Sirius gathered closer to the older man and waited for him to begin. "It's time for you to take over, Sirius," he said to his grandson with a nod. Sirius shook his head at the man. "I can't," he said sadly. "Why not?" Arcturus asked, clearly surprised. "Our family has a reputation to uphold, and I'm not the man to do it." Sirius began his explanation. "Even though I'm innocent, I went to Azkaban for 12 years for murder and betraying my friends. People will never forget that, and they won't trust or respect me," he continued. "And I plan on marrying a werewolf, something no one will approve of," he added. "Harry is my heir, is and will be respected more than anyone. It should be him," he finished with a firm nod. "That might be the most sensible thing you've ever said," Arcturus responded, frowning, and turned to Harry. "Then it is up to you to take the lead, Potter," the older man said to the shocked teen. "Me?" Harry asked with a hint of sadness. "Yes," Arcturus replied, irritably. "But won't the line die out if I take over? I'm a Potter," Harry pointed out. "You can choose to take the black name, or you can even pass it on to one of your sons, if you want," Arcturus explained. "But even if you don't, then I am proud to say that my line was absorbed into one such as yours," he said sincerely. "It has to be you, Potter. There is no other man who I would allow to take it if Sirius won't," Arcturus finished firmly. Harry conceded with a reluctant nod. "Good man," Arcturus said. "And remember, you are a black by blood as much as you are a Potter. You even look like one of us," he mused. There was a comfortable silence while Arcturus gained his breath before he spoke again. "Now you two," he said seriously. "You have to rely on and trust each other no matter what," he continued. "There are very few people you will be able to trust implicitly, but I know you two can without any doubt," he said confidently. I can see how much you care for each other. Either of you would give your lives for the other. Never ever lose sight of that, he added firmly. You will need each other. You can't do this alone, he finished firmly. Harry and Sirius shared a look and a nod in agreement with the man's words. Now fetch the others, Arcturus instructed. Sirius left and returned a moment later with the other three. They all gathered around the bed again, waiting for the older man to talk, when the doors burst open and Narcissa Malfoy entered looking frantic. I have the counter curse, she explained to them hurriedly, waving a piece of parchment at the gathered group. What the hell are you doing here, sissy? Andromeda asked angrily, drawing her wand. Enough, Arcturus croaked and coughed violently. She is a black regardless of her moron of a husband. She should be here, he added after composing himself. Andromeda put her wand away and Harry snatched the parchment from Narcissa's hand and read it. Where did you get this? Harry asked skeptically. Rudolphus told Bellatrix what he did and she gave it to me, Narcissa explained. She damn near tortured him to insanity for it, she added with a shake of her head. Good, Harry said with a feral grin. He turned to Arcturus and drew his wand. Don't, Arcturus said firmly. But it might work, Harry responded incredulously. You have to let me try, he added vehemently. No? Arcturus said firmly with a shake of his head. But it might save your life, Harry said disbelievingly. That's not what I want, Arcturus replied casually. Harry looked at the man dumbfounded for a moment before he could speak. You must be joking, he stated simply and then frowned. You can't just give up, he added angrily. Everybody out except Potter. Arcturus commanded the group, who hesitated momentarily before leaving with looks of disbelief adorning their faces. When the two were alone, Arcturus looked at Harry critically for a minute before he spoke. What happened after you got hit with that curse in the graveyard? He asked the young man casually. I spoke to my mum and grandfather, Harry answered in confusion. And what did they say to you? Arcturus followed up. They told me they'd all be waiting for me, Harry replied with a shrug. Exactly, Arcturus said knowingly. I have people waiting for me too, he added. Harry just looked at the man sadly. I have my sons and my wife waiting for me, Harry. Arcturus continued with tears in his eyes. 17 years I've been without her and I have never stopped missing her, he continued, in an unusual emotional voice. Harry nodded his understanding. You know, Arcturus began with a chuckle. I've been mad at Charles for allowing himself to die from that curse for 15 years, he explained with a shake of his head. Now I find myself in the same position, and I understand. He loved Edoria so much that the chance to be with her again was all he could think about. And that is how I feel about Melania, he explained. But what will I do without you? Harry asked emotionally. Oh, come on, Potter. There's nothing else I can teach you, Arcturus pointed out. You're a better man than most, and more capable than any I have ever met, he continued sincerely. Some people just don't want to be saved, and you have to accept that, he intoned with a slow nod. A part of life is letting those go that we care about, no matter how painful it is at the time, he finished. But I'll miss you, Harry said weakly. And I will be waiting for you when your time is done, Arcturus replied with a gentle smile. I'll be there with Charles, Doria, and all the Blacks and Potters. You don't think this friendship is just for here, do you? He asked the boy seriously. Harry shook his head and laughed reluctantly. I hope not, he answered genuinely. Just make sure you kick his ass and send him to me and Charles so we get a turn too. Arcturus said good-humouredly. I will, and Rudolphus too, Harry promised. Good, Arcturus replied with a smirk. Now we have to talk about the family. Arcturus continued. I don't care how you run things, I trust your judgment. But I have one request, he informed the teen. What's that? Harry asked with a frown. Don't turn your back on them. If they seek help, then give it to them, he pleaded. They are our blood, and as a Black we always offer help and sanctuary to our own, no matter what, he said firmly. Harry, though, for a moment and just nodded. He would respect that one request from the man. Thank you, Arcturus responded gratefully. That doesn't mean I like any of this, Harry replied sadly. You don't have to like it, you just have to accept it. It's my time and I get to go on my terms. The older man explained. Now get the others. Harry left and retrieved the others as requested. The group stood silently and waited for Arcturus to speak. "Potter's going to be the head of the family," he informed them casually. They all looked shocked, except for Sirius, who nodded his agreement. "I gave my reasons for not taking over," Sirius explained to the group. The Tonks just nodded in agreement and Narcissa looked nervous. "What does that mean for me?" she asked, with concern lacing her tone. "Your grandfather's offer still stands," Harry answered the woman. "But so does my promise," he added. "How is Lucy anyway?" he asked. "He got away from the ministry unscathed," Narcissa replied with a shrug. "Shame," Harry said coldly. "There's always next time," he added with a grin. "Lucius may be many things, but he is no fool," Narcissa responded. "He won't fight you." "Who says he has a choice?" Harry returned angrily, his eyes flashing dangerously. "I am going to kill that bastard if I get the chance," he promised, looking the woman in the eye. Narcissa swallowed deeply and nodded. She knew the boy meant it. "Now all that is left is for me to pass on the headship," Arcturus cut in, removing his family ring. He looked at it lovingly before holding it out for Harry to take, which he did, hesitantly, and with no small amount of sadness. "This may feel a little strange," Arcturus warned him. "Put the ring on," he instructed. Harry placed the ring on his left middle finger and waited. "I, Arcturus Orion Black, hereby name Harry James Potter as my successor as head of the Black family. May you carry the name proudly and bring honor to our great house," he finished. Harry felt a huge wave of magic pass through him, and he felt quite light-headed from the influx. The group watched as Harry's eyes changed to a cold steel grey briefly before turning back to the usual emerald green. "It is done," Arcturus informed them. "The ring carries a few useful protections for the whole family. You will feel a connection to everyone with black blood," he explained. "You will get all the relevant knowledge of the family, safe houses and so on," he finished. Harry nodded and could feel the magic tingling within him. He didn't feel any more powerful, but he was more aware of the magic within him. "Now leave me in peace," Arcturus commanded. "I need some sleep. I'm not quite dead yet," he finished irritably. The gathered people congratulated Harry on becoming head of the family. Before they left, Narcissa asked to speak to Harry privately and handed him the note that Bellatrix had given her. He just nodded at her and pocketed it. Harry and Sirius remained for a while and just spoke, something they had not had much time to do over the last few months, and something they both appreciated very much. They both knew Arcturus didn't have much time left and opted to stay close by and be here when the time came. Internally, Harry was feeling more than a little heartbroken. He truly cared for the old git and was struggling to accept that he was going to die and that he wanted to. He was going to miss him and fought continuously against trying to counter the curse. He knew Arcturus would be furious. Harry understood how he felt. He felt it himself, and there were times he couldn't wait to be with his parents. But that did not make it any easier for him. All it felt like was that someone else he cared about was going to be taken away from him again, something he had a lot of experience of. He wanted to scream, shout, and cry. But instead he allowed those emotions to simmer under the surface. Now was not the time to let them out, and he knew it. He fought the tears for the sake of the older man, knowing that he would prefer Harry to be strong until the time was right to let it out. Break. Narcissa Malfoy exited Hogwarts and disapparated back to the manor to inform her sister of the day's developments. It had taken her 3 days to track her grandfather down, and even then it was all for nothing. She entered the living room where she and her sister spent most of their time to find Bellatrix lazing on the sofa as she usually did when she had nothing better to do. When Bellatrix saw her sister enter the room, she sat up and looked at questioningly. "Well?" she asked when Narcissa said nothing. Narcissa shook her head. "He wouldn't let the curse be countered," she told the other woman. "Why?" Bellatrix asked with a frown. "He said he wanted to go," Narcissa explained with a shrug. "Unbelievable," Bellatrix said in exasperation. "What about Potter?" she added. "I gave him your note. I don't know if he's read it yet, though," Narcissa replied. "He really has it in for Lucius and Rudolphus, though." Bellatrix cackled with glee. Maybe we can both be rid of our idiot husbands then, she exclaimed hopefully. I don't want rid of my husband Bella, Narcissa responded sadly. I already lost my son, she added, shaking her head. Oh, come on, Sissy, Lucius is a moron, and you know it. He is definitely going to get himself killed this time. He is next to useless. With a wand and his connections are gone, Bellatrix pointed out. Narcissa said nothing. She knew her sister wouldn't understand, having been in a marriage she detested. Potter is the head of the family. Narcissa spoke quietly. What? Bellatrix screeched. Sirius didn't want it and Potter is his heir, Narcissa explained. Interesting, Bellatrix intoned, tapping her chin with a finger. I guess I can't kill him even if I wanted to, then she added with a frown. But he can't kill you either, Narcissa informed her. Why not? Bellatrix asked curiously. Grandfather made him promise to offer anyone with black blood sanctuary and help if we asked for it, Narcissa said with a shrug. Very interesting, Bellatrix declared, but that doesn't mean he won't let us be killed or order us to be killed, she added thoughtfully. We are going to have to be neutral towards him, she finished with a nod. You think the Dark Lord will allow that? Narcissa questioned with a surprised tone. He wants to kill Potter personally, Bellatrix pointed out. I don't plan on fighting him. I don't quite fancy death yet, she added with a shrug. Me either, Narcissa agreed. What do we do? She asked. The Dark Lord is still sulking and is definitely scared of Potter, Bellatrix replied, frowning. He won't be looking to fight him anytime soon, especially without knowing what that stupid prophecy says, she said confidently. We just wait and see what happens, she finished with a shrug. Narcissa just nodded her agreement. I wonder if he will take me up on my offer. It wouldn't hurt to score some points with the new head of the family either. Bellatrix mused aloud. Narcissa had no idea what her sister had done, but she knew it would not be taken well by the Dark Lord if her were to discover it. Chances were that it would be bad for her also. Break. It was in the early hours of the morning that Harry and Sirius found themselves sat vigil on either side of the bed that Arcturus was occupying. For the past several hours they had felt him getting weaker and weaker, and they were now simply waiting for him to pass. Harry clutched the older man's hand and could almost feel the life draining from him. He could certainly feel his magic getting weaker. He had been fighting the tears to an unbearable degree, and for the past hour or so they had been threatening to fall. He held strong, however, and his eyes remained dry despite how hard it was for him to accept the man's decision. Harry felt the older man grip his hand quite firmly for a man who was on his deathbed and returned the gesture, but much more gently. He knew the moment was drawing ever closer, and he steeled himself. Arcturus opened his eyes briefly and looked at the two men and gave them a weak smile before he closed his eyes for the final time. Upon feeling the man's grip loosen in his own, Harry allowed his head to slump to his chest and the first tears to fall. He desperately squeezed the hand he still held, willing the man to respond. But it was not to be. Baron Arcturus Orion Black had passed on. He would be reunited with the wife and the sons that had long since left him, something he had been waiting for many years. Harry Potter openly wept over the body of the man that not only saved him, but made him who he was now. He would never forget Arcturus Black, his personal savior and friend in his greatest time of need, until the very end. Lord Voldemort had spent much of his time alone since the disaster in the Ministry of Magic, 2 weeks of near solitude. He was in no mood to neither entertain nor be in the company of others. He had too much to think about for such distractions. There had been some well-received news for the Dark Lord, however, and that came in the form of Fenrir Greyback, returning from the continent with around 50 of his kin. The Dark Lord had expected many more, but they were a welcome addition nonetheless. He suspected that word of Harry Potter and his actions had spread rapidly and caused many of them to not join his service, something that would be rectified with the boy's death. Lord Voldemort was still plagued with worry, however. A sense of fear and unease had settled within him, much to his annoyance. He had never had reason to fear anyone or anything, but Harry Potter had changed that. The Dark Lord had technically killed him twice, yet he still breathed and fought back. That would simply not do. The Dark Lord despised insolence, but it was something he would have to tolerate for the time being. Potter's day would come, but Lord Voldemort was no fool. There was one thing he needed first before he would chance an encounter with the boy again. That damn prophecy. He had been pondering the blasted thing since that night and drew nothing but blanks as to what the contents could be. It angered him, it annoyed him, and it worried him. Something that angered him further. The Dark Lord had allowed himself to be trapped in a vicious cycle, and he knew he needed to act drastically to break it. This is why he had sent for one of his oldest and most loyal followers. The man had heard the first part of the prophecy and passed on what he knew to his master, but it was not enough. Lord Voldemort needed more, and he would get it by any means necessary. The man he was waiting for entered the room and prostrated himself before him in his usual fashion. "My lord," Snape intoned with a bow. "Ah, Severus, I believe it is time that we have a talk," Voldemort replied casually. The potions master remained silent, but it was clear that he was nervous. A talk with the Dark Lord never ended well if it did not go the way he wanted. "What news is there of Potter?" Voldemort asked the man. "He has not been seen since the night Black died," Snape informed him. "I see," Voldemort mused. "When is the funeral?" he asked further. "Tomorrow, my lord," Snape answered knowingly. "Are you planning an attack?" he added. "No, Severus, I will grant the boy the grace of a funeral. Call it a gift, if you will," the Dark Lord explained with a smirk. The truth was, he knew that the funeral would be very heavily guarded and near impossible to stage an attack. It would be a bloodbath that his men would be on the receiving end of, and he simply did not have the disposable numbers right now. "That is generous of you, my lord," Snape intoned with a bow. "It is indeed," Voldemort agreed. "However, that is not why I requested your presence, Severus," he told the man. "How can I be of service?" Snape asked. "It was you, was it not, that brought the prophecy to my attention all those years ago?" he began rhetorically. "I want to know who gave the prophecy," he stated firmly. "I can't tell you, my lord. The headmaster forced me to give an oath," Snape replied desperately, knowing that that meant nothing to the man. "That is a shame, Severus," Voldemort said casually, "but I really do need that information," he finished dangerously. Snape just stood rooted to the spot. He knew the man would get the information he wanted one way or another, even if that forfeited his life. Voldemort stood and drew his wand. He walked slowly towards the man casually. "It seems having you as my spy has benefited me very little, Severus," he said irritably. "You have brought me nothing overtly useful since my return, and the one thing I want is something that you can give," he added dangerously. "My lord, I have information," the potions master said desperately. "You have not been available to receive it," he pointed out. The Dark Lord paused. It was true that he had instructed his men not to disturb him unless it was of the utmost importance. "Okay, Severus," he granted. "Share with me what you have," he requested firmly, taking his seat again. "Potter has been spending quite a lot of time at Hogwarts," Snape began frantically. "He has been in the company of one of my 5th years, Daphne Greengrass. It seems they have become very fond of each other," he informed the man. "Interesting," Voldemort mused. "Something to think on," he added. "What else?" he questioned with a frown. "He has also become very fond of a Muggle-born first year," Snape continued. "She's an orphan like him. Her name is MacDonald or something," he explained with a frown. "Very interesting," Voldemort said with a smirk. "I have just the thing for her." He looked at Snape critically, waiting for him to proceed. "He has already completed his odals to a very high level," he continued weakly. "His magic is beyond foolish schooling." Voldemort spat. "If you have nothing else, Severus, then I am afraid I will have to take what it is I do want." "No, please, my lord," Snape pleaded. "I can still be useful to you. The most use you can be is giving me what I want." The Dark Lord responded, drawing his wand. "I do hope your oath was worth it, Severus. Crucio," he finished with a sadistic smile. Snape collapsed to the floor in a heap and screamed, his throat raw. He knew if he told the man, then his magic was forfeit and maybe even his life. "Who was it, Severus?" Voldemort asked desperately after he had lifted the curse. "Who gave the prophecy?" Snape was silent but jerked involuntarily. He knew he could not hold up long under the Dark Lord's power. He steeled himself, knowing that more was to follow. But the pain he expected did not come. Instead, he was hit with a bludgeoner to the knee. It seems the Dark Lord had become more inventive with his punishments and interrogations. He did not just rely on one curse anymore. Snape knew he was in for a very painful experience. The Dark Lord was unforgiving and unrelenting. Either his mind would break or his body would. It mattered not, because he was a dead man, no matter what. The spells continued to inflict pain on the potions master for an inordinate amount of time. It is strange, the punishment that the human body can absorb and still function to a degree of clarity. Severus Snape was certainly surprised by the resilience he demonstrated, but a large part of him wished that he was much weaker and would succumb to the inevitable much quicker. He had lost consciousness several times throughout the ordeal, but found himself awake once more after only a moment. He was in so much pain that he could not even hazard a guess as to what damage had been done to him. He could feel many broken bones and several trails of blood running from the many wounds he had received. The worst was the smell, however. The sweet and sickly smell of burnt flesh and iron that plagued his nose caused him to vomit several times. He could also smell urine, but chose to ignore that one. He refused to accept that he had pissed himself, although he knew that was a common side effect of great physical trauma. Despite all that had been done to him, he refused to relent. He owed that much to Lily. He had failed with every other promise he had made to her after she had passed, but he would not fail this time. Come, Severus, even you know now that you will have no quality of life after this. Voldemort cut in. Just tell me what I want to know and I will heal you, he promised with a faux sincere tone. Tell me now, he roared as he fired another string of curses at the downed man. Snape just lay on the ground unmoving. It seemed that his body had finally had enough. Ep8, the Dark Lord shouted, pointing his wand towards the man. Nothing happened. Voldemort began waving his wand over the man and found that he was still alive. He smirked to himself. He knew what would work now, something he wouldn't try on a strong-willed man unless he knew he could defeat them, a mistake he had made with Harry Potter. He readied himself and faded into a thick black fog to enter the man's mind. He entered and found that it was in a deplorable state. It seems that Severus had had some very powerful mind defenses. Something the Dark Lord was pleased no longer remained. It took him quite some time to find what he was looking for, but he found it eventually. He watched the memory of Snape spying in the hogshead and immediately recognized the voice. He had, after all, heard it at Hogwarts when he was possessing that fool Quirrell. At least Snape had been honest about only hearing the first part of the prophecy, as the Dark Lord saw him expelled from the premises for his snooping. He extracted himself from Snape's mind and smiled as he pressed his wand to the man's mark to summon two of his followers. He had the perfect plan to remind Potter that he should not be taken lightly and the perfect people to execute it. He waited impatiently for the two men to arrive, watching the form of Severus Snape draining the last dregs of life. It possessed. He waved his wand over the man once more and found that there was no response at all. Severus Snape was dead. Break. Harry Potter had spent the last 2 weeks in a self-imposed isolation. He needed time and space to put everything into perspective. The only exception to this isolation had been Sirius, to whom he had spent a reasonable amount of time with arranging the funeral and so forth. Harry felt something that he had not ever felt before in his life. He felt numb. Any compassion he had ever had died along with the older man, a man that he missed more and more as each day passed. Although he had not seen him much save for mealtimes, the emptiness the man left behind permeated throughout the house. He had felt it the instant he had returned, the very day that Arcturus had passed on. He arrived back in the drawing room to find a very inconsolable Elgar, who had forgone his usual professional manner in favor of demonstrating his grief at the loss of his lifelong master. "I'm sorry, Elgar," Harry said sincerely to the elf. "It's not your fault, Lord Black," the elf replied dismissively with more than a hint of pain in his voice. "I shall be gone, be the evening," he added with a firm nod. "Why?" Harry asked incredulously. "My service with the Black family is to end when Lord Arcturus passes," the elf informed him sadly. "Is that what you want?" Harry questioned the elf with a frown. "No, sir," Elgar answered firmly, "but yous has your elf, sir," he added sadly. "Elgar, there is always a place for you here," Harry said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "If you want to stay, then you can. This is your home, and I'm sure you would be a great help to me," he finished resolutely. "You would keep Elgar?" the elf asked, clearly surprised. "I would love for you to stay," Harry replied genuinely. "You can carry out the same duties. Nothing has to change," he explained to the elf. "Elgar would like that, Lord Black," the elf responded with a bow. "How about you just call me Master Potter as you always have?" Harry suggested. "Arcturus was your master, and I don't expect you to call me Lord Black if it upsets you." "Thank you, Master Potter," the elf said gratefully. Harry bonded the elf to the House of Black and allowed him to continue the service he had been carrying out for many decades. It was the least he could do. The 2 weeks that had passed since the death of Arcturus had been trying for them both. They shared a relationship similar to what they always had, but Harry made an extra effort to ensure that the elf was coping as best he could. He could see the heartbreak that he himself felt reflected in Elgar's eyes and wanted to help him as much as he could. Today was the day of the funeral, something Harry did not feel much like facing, but knew that it was his duty as both a friend and the head of the family to do so. He knew the media and many people would be in attendance. Arcturus was the last living Baron after all, so it was expected. He had made sure to invite all of those he wished to attend personally. Even Elgar and Dobby would both be there, much to the Black Elf's relief. He had spent much time along with Sirius at the Black Crypt, preparing for the day. He had ensured that the security of the venue was as good as could be provided. No one would be in attendance without him knowing about it. He had made sure that there was enough seating for the ample number of guests, and that the wake was catered and provided for sufficiently. He just wanted the day to go ahead without any issues or problems. He was the first to arrive at the crypt, followed closely by Sirius, who hugged his godson as he arrived. "Are you ready for this?" Sirius asked worriedly. "We have to be," Harry answered flatly. This was something that Sirius had noticed about his godson since his grandfather had passed. He seemed to have taken the man's words on board and began including him in everything the way the man wanted. It was them against the world, and Sirius would have it no other way. He was proud to be the young man's confidant and would mirror his sentiment. It was them the way his grandfather wished it would be. "We will get through this, all of it," he said resolutely. They spoke for only a few minutes when the first guests began to arrive. Dobby and Elgar had been here all morning preparing for the service. Albus Dumbledore was the first to arrive and greeted the duo solemnly. "I am truly sorry for your loss," he intoned to the pair sincerely. "Although we didn't see eye to eye on most things, he was a great man in his own right," he finished genuinely. "Thank you, Professor," Harry said gratefully. "Thank you," Sirius replied with a bow. A flood of guests arrived after the headmaster, the Tonks, Narcissa, the Greengrasses, and many others Harry did not recognize. Even Cornelius Fudge appeared, much to Harry's surprise. "I am saddened by your loss, Lord Potter," the man intoned with a bow. "If there is anything I can do, then please do not hesitate to ask," he added. "Actually, Minister, there is," Harry responded thoughtfully. "I would like immunity from prosecution. You know I am his #1 target, and he and his followers will be coming for me. I would like to be able to defend myself and any other who needs it without worry," he explained to the man. Fudge looked thoughtful for a moment and then nodded. "Consider it done. I doubt there would be anyone who would argue with your logic," Fudge said in agreement. "And my godfather also. He spends most of his time with me," Harry pointed out. "I will have the paperwork sent out first thing tomorrow, but do keep it quiet," he requested. "It would not do to see I am essentially giving you a hit wizard license," he finished firmly. "Of course, Minister," Harry answered with a grin. "Clever," Sirius said as Fudge walked away. "He was hardly going to deny me, was he?" Harry replied. "He knows you are going to do what you want anyway. It was in his best interest," Sirius said with a shrug. "This way he is part of the solution and not hindering the effort." Seeing that the venue was full of people and the service was about to begin, the two took their seats on the front row with the rest of the Black family. The service began, and Harry found himself simply staring at the ornate black coffin where the older man was now resting. He was completely transfixed on the wooden construct and heard very little of the monotonous proceedings. The man carrying out the service clearly knew nothing of the man, and read from simple pre-written passages. "Are there any among you who wish to say a few words?" the man questioned the crowd after he had finished his ramblings. Harry immediately stood. He was not well versed in speeches and such public events, but he wanted to say something. He knew it was expected of him at the very least, being the new head of the Black family. He approached the podium on the raised dais and took a deep breath, the crowd watching with unwavering attentiveness. "It is my duty of the new head of the Black family to say a few words about my predecessor," he began. There was some murmuring amongst the members of the crowd that clearly did not know he had been named as the new Lord Black. "But I do not stand here out of duty today," he continued. "I stand here privileged and simply as Harry James Potter. I've heard Arcturus described as a miserable old git, a cantankerous bastard, and even surly and unfriendly, and I have to say that I agree with all of those," he said with a smirk. "But I have heard him described as one thing that I will never see him as, and that is heartless," he stated sincerely. Some members of the crowd mumbled at this but allowed Harry to continue. "Although he will kick my ass for saying this, Arcturus Orion Black had the biggest heart of any person I have ever met." Harry went on, at the risk of his own life, and for the sake of an old friend he rescued a skinny, undergrown and underprepared 14-year-old boy from the direst of situations. He welcomed that boy into his home, he cared for him, he healed him, he fed him and he clothed him, but above all that he taught him who he was and gave him what he needed to be strong, the way he needed to be to handle what it is he faced and still faces. He explained, "That skinny kid was me," he added sadly. "I owe my life to Arcturus Orion Black, and I stand here today proud to call him nothing short of my friend. He gave me something that I had never had before, a place to call home. He gave me strength, and he gave me hope when I needed it most. He told me all about my family, and he showed me what it was to be a man of both of my lines, and I will take those lessons and honor him and his memory until the day I die." Harry vowed. He walked towards the coffin and placed his right hand on it. "Thank you, my friend," he whispered. "I will lead your family proudly and bring honor to your name as I will my own," he added, wiping away a stray tear. He approached the podium once again and looked towards over the crowd. "Now that is done, there is something else I have to say, and it is directly to the reason as to why we had to be here today," he began seriously. The audience looked at him expectantly, and he took a deep breath before continuing, attempting to control his anger, but he was already failing and he could feel his magic reacting to it. "To anyone who carries the mark and follows the self-styled Dark Lord Voldemort," he said dangerously. Many in the crowd gasped and flinched at the use of the name, but Harry ignored it. "I am coming for every single one of you, without mercy." He continued, his anger becoming more apparent, his eyes glowing with the usual emerald fire. "You have taken the last person you will take from me, and now it is my turn," he said darkly. "I promise I will hunt every last one of you down until there is none of you bastards left," he added resolutely. "You can't do that," a voice from the media broke in disbelief. "Actually," Cornelius Fudge replied, "he can. Mr. Potter is a registered hit wizard, and we are at war," he explained. "I have personally signed the paperwork myself," he added, giving Harry a firm nod. The journalists began writing ferociously. "And Tom," Harry cut in loudly, "I am coming for you too, and I will be sending you to hell, even if I have to make the journey there with you myself," he vowed. "Who is Tom?" one of the journalists shouted in question. "Tom Riddle," Harry answered the man. "You are a journalist, work it out." The journalist shared a look and a shrug. It was something they would have to look into. Harry left the stage and resumed his seat. A few other people gave speeches, and to Harry's surprise even Sirius said a few words. It was not long after the service that most of the attendees found themselves at the Three Broomsticks at the wake of Arcturus. Harry, Sirius, and the rest of the Black family members had spent much of their time entertaining well-wishers and people offering condolences. One of the less enjoyable aspects of such an event. Neither Harry nor Sirius were in the mood for this formality, but both tolerated it for the sake of the man. The truth was that they both just wanted to be alone and figuring out what their next move would be, something that Arcturus would usually handle or at least have things to suggest. Nonetheless, they were here and everything else would be put on hold for today, while they both mourned and celebrated the life and passing of the older man. Harry had just thanked what felt like the 1,000th person for coming when he felt a hand rest on his shoulder. He turned to see Jonathan Greengrass looking at him with concern. "How are you holding up, Harry?" he asked in a caring voice. Harry shrugged and ran his hand through his hair. "I'm not sure, to be honest," he answered. The man with a sigh. "He's the person I got the closest to that I've lost. I feel either numb or angry," he finished with another shrug. "It's understandable," Jonathan answered. "It might not feel like it now, but I promise it does get easier. I went through the same when I lost my mother," he explained. "If there's anything you need, then we are here for you," he said, gesturing to his family. "Really anything at all," he added, squeezing the young man's shoulder. "Thank you," Harry replied gratefully. Jonathan nodded and moved aside to allow other people to have a moment with the teen. Daphne approached him before anyone else could and took his hand. "I'm sorry for not being around," Harry said to the girl who just shook her head. "You have nothing to be sorry for. I know how much he meant to you, and I really am sorry," she responded with a gentle squeeze of the hand she was holding. "Please just don't feel like you're alone," she pleaded. "I know you do, but you aren't. My dad meant what he said. They really do care about you," she continued. "I care about you," she added. "You've seen what happens to people who care about me," Harry mumbled. "Look at me, Harry," Daphne requested, cupping his cheek. Harry looked into her worry-filled icy blue eyes and immediately felt a warmth he had started to become familiar with. "Are you going to let that happen to me?" she asked him quietly. "Just imagine one of them taking me and doing God knows what to me," she instructed. "I would make them wish they were dead," Harry growled in fury at the thought, the emerald fire in his eyes roaring in agreement. "That's why I'm not worried," Daphne explained sincerely. "I know you wouldn't let anything happen to me or my family, so please listen to what my dad said. We are all here for you, especially me," she said, placing a gentle kiss on his lips. "Just write to me and see me when you can," she added with a sad smile. "I miss your letters and I miss you," she finished, placing a kiss on his cheek before walking away. Harry could see and feel the honesty coming from her, and it made him smile, the first genuine smile since the night Arcturus had died. He shook his head in realization, realized that he truly cared for the blonde girl more than he thought could be possible. The thought of her warmed him, and he took some comfort in that. It did not help with the pang of loss he felt from the passing of his friend and mentor, but it filled him with hope of something more, something special to cherish now and to look forward to also. It told him that he still had something worth fighting for other than the simple pleasure of living and the select few he held in any esteem. Lord Potter, a low and crackly voice cut in, disrupting his reverie. "Hello, Barchoke," Harry said, greeting the goblin with a bow. "We have business to discuss, as you are the new head of the Black family, if you wish to retain my services, of course." The goblin informed him. "I don't see any reason to why I would need to find a new goblin to be in charge of the family finances," Harry replied with a shrug. "What business do we have?" he asked. "Thank you, Lord Potter," the goblin said, clearly relieved. "Firstly, we have the reading of the will of Arcturus to be done first, and then you and I need to discuss a few things, as you are now the head of 2 families, and the owner of a significant fortune," the goblin informed him. "I didn't even think of that," Harry said ashamedly. "That's why it is my job to handle it," the goblin replied. "The will reading should be done as soon as possible to deal with any issues that may arise from the passing of the former head," he explained. Harry thought for a moment before replying. "How about tomorrow?" he asked. "Just as I would have suggested," the goblin intoned with a bow. "I shall inform all others named in the will," he added. "Thank you, Barchoke," Harry sighed, offering the goblin his hand, who shook it gratefully. "I shall see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Lord Potter," the goblin added as he bid his farewell. The news of a will reading did not sit well with Harry. He truly had not taken that into consideration, and it was something he did not want to face. He knew that it was just another of those duties that he would have to fulfill, however, and would take it in his stride. He just hoped that the formalities would end soon, so he could grieve for his friend, something he had had very little time to do. Harry shook his head sadly and returned to receiving the remainder of the guests. This day could not end quickly enough for the young man. Break. As promised, Harry arrived at Gringotts at 9 a.m. to meet with Barchoke to listen to Arcturus's will and discuss the business mentioned the previous day. Unsurprisingly, he was greeted by Sirius, the Tonks family and Narcissa. They were quickly led through the same room that Harry had first come to with Arcturus all those months ago. He had a moment of nostalgia that was interrupted by the goblin, who was keen to get started. "We will first hear the will of Arcturus and then we can discuss it, if necessary," he informed the group in a business-like tone, removing a sheaf of parchment from a case embossed with the Black family crest. The goblin cleared his throat before he began to read. "I, Arcturus, Orion Black, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare this my last will and testament, dated the 23rd of May 1996. This will both replaces and takes precedence over any other will dated prior to this one. Firstly, as you are hearing this, then clearly I have passed on. If what a certain young man has told me is true, then I shall now be with my wife and sons, finally existing in some form of peace, I hope. To Andromeda Tonks, I leave you the sum of 5 million galleons in the hope that it gives you the security you deserve in life, and an apology. I apologize for not standing by you when you chose to flee instead of marrying a husband of your father's choosing. He was a fool, as was I, for allowing him such liberties within the family. I only hope that the new head has a much more firm hand to prevent things like this happening again. Again, I apologize to you and hope you can forgive a man for his mistakes." Andromeda smiled at the rare sentiment shown by her grandfather. The apology meant more than the gold ever would. She and Ted had had to work hard for what they had, but they had always managed. "To Theodore Tonks, as the husband of my granddaughter, that gold is as much yours as it is hers. What I give to you is both my blessing and acceptance into the House of Black. I never got to know you, but I trust my granddaughter's judgment. You must be a good man to win her over to the point of risking expulsion from the family. Continue looking after the way you have all these years, and welcome to the family." Ted pulled his wife into a one-armed hug. He had never expected any form of acceptance by the older man, and having it truly meant a lot to him. "To Narcissa Malfoy, I leave you the sum of 5 million galleons under the condition that your idiot husband does not get a single note of it. I also leave you a bracelet from your grandmother, one that is connected to the head of house ring. Should you need it, it will work as a portkey that will take you directly to whoever is head of house. It is tied to the black blood, so only yourself or a member of the family can use it. Remember that, because the consequences of someone else using it will be most unpleasant." Narcissa just smiled sadly at what had been left to her. She wished that her grandfather would accept Lucius, but knew that would never happen. To Bellatrix Lestrange, everyone in the room stiffened at this. "I leave you with the offer of sanctuary by the House of Black. If you choose to accept, you are much better than you have shown, and I find myself disappointed in your choices. I give you this ring that will work in the same manner as your sister's. I trust that she will get it to you." Narcissa took the ring from the goblin and nodded her agreement and turned to Harry. "Did you read the note?" she asked him. "Not yet," Harry replied, having forgotten all about it. "I will read it later," he added. "Bella is keen for you too, she says. It is something that will interest you and Sirius," she explained. Harry looked towards Sirius, who just shrugged in reply, and the group waited for Barchoke to continue. "To Nymphadora Tonks, you may not be a Black by name, but you are by blood. I leave you the sum of 5 million galleons and a book of the Black family magic. You have every right to learn it, and I implore that you do. It might just save your life. Use the money to build a good life for yourself once this war is over." Tonks looked at her mother, who nodded her agreement with what Arcturus had said. "To Sirius Orion Black, I also leave you the sum of 5 million galleons and a final request. I have watched you grow into a very capable wizard over the last months. and I am proud to call you my grandson. I know the family has not always been good to you, but carry the name of Black proudly. You certainly do it justice. Protect our blood, Sirius, and bring honor and respect to our name once more. Find yourself a woman who makes you happy and just live as best you can. Trust Harry and protect him as you should always have. The chance to raise him as you would a son was taken from you, but in him you have a brother. Hold on to that, Sirius. You have no idea how important that will be in the days to come. Sirius placed an arm around his godson's shoulder and nodded firmly. There was nothing that would stop him being there for him now. And finally, to Harry James Potter. What can I say? I have watched you grow from a meek boy into a man I am proud to call not only a friend, but also family. I am proud of you, Harry, no matter what happens, but make sure you fulfill what you have set out to do. Never forget who you are and where you come from. I know both Charles and Doria were just as proud as I am at the man you have become. I leave you the sum of 5 million galleons and the house we have shared. That is your home now, something I know you have always craved. Trust Sirius, and I know that between you both those bastards don't stand a chance. Protect our family, Harry, it is precious and all we have left. And remember to live, kill that bastard and make our family grow. I have a faith in you that I haven't felt since I fought side by side with your grandfather. Harry fought the tears that threatened to fall. He really had no idea how much he meant to the older man, but hearing it in his own words made it very real, and he appreciated it beyond the comprehension of words. I will be waiting for you all on the other side and hope that we do not meet until the time is right. But until then, look out for each other and you will all make it through this storm, of that I have no doubt. That concludes the will of Arcturus Orion Black, Barchoke informed them, placing the parchment back in the case. Any questions? He asked the group. They all shook their heads respectively. Okay then, our business is done, but I must speak with Lord Potter, Barchoke said, dismissively. The group bid their farewells and left after Harry had told them to come to him if they needed anything. He pulled Sirius back as he was about to leave. I want you to stay with me, he said to his godfather. I'm still not very good at dealing with the goblins, he added. Sirius looked towards Barchoke, who nodded his consent. What business do we need to discuss? Harry asked. Well, as you are now the head of 2 families, you need to decide if you want to combine the 2 fortunes or leave them separate, Barchoke informed him. Keep it separate, Harry instructed. The Black Line is still alive. It would be disrespectful to merge everything as things are, he explained. As I would have suggested, Barchoke intoned with a bow. Now it is my duty to inform you that as a head of 2 major wizarding families, you have the right to marry 2 witches. 1 for the continuation of each family, he told the shocked teen. I am only almost 16, Harry began. But I definitely won't take 2 wives, he said firmly. Marriage is not something I will even consider until I am older and the war is over, he finished with a nod. Very well, Barchoke replied. Now would you like to go over the finances, or would you like me to continue as the former Lord Black had instructed? It was very profitable, and there is nothing I think you will disagree with, he explained. Then carry on, Harry instructed. If you don't see any need to change anything, then I trust your judgment. Then we are finished here, the goblin declared. I will of course keep you up to date with everything and you can contact me any time you wish. He finished with a bow. Thank you, Barchoke, Harry said sincerely and shook the goblin's hand. Shall we go and read that letter from your cousin? He asked Sirius. Best get it out of the way, I guess. Sirius shrugged. Merlin knows what that mental cow wants, he added, shaking his head. The 2 left the bank and disapparated to the drawing room of the house that Harry had just been left by his older companion. He felt a stab of sadness at the realization, followed by a wave of comfort. The man cared enough to give him a home, and that meant more than anything else to the younger man. He led Sirius to his room, where he had left the parchment on his desk the day he had received it. He picked up the folded note and tried to open it, but to no avail. He frowned and tapped it with his wand, causing the seal to come loose. He unfolded it and read, To Potter, I have a proposition for you that I believe will be beneficial to us both. I only ask that you meet me with an open mind and not hand me to the auras or attack me. You have my magical vow that I will come alone and not attempt to harm you. You will get what you want, and in turn I shall too. I look forward to hearing from you. Just write your reply on the back of this parchment and tap it with your wand. It will find its way back to me. Kisses. Bella. Harry frowned as the parchment glowed blue, sealing the vow she had given. He handed the note to Sirius, who also frowned after reading it. What do you think? Harry questioned his godfather. If she hadn't given a vow, I would throw it in the fire, he replied, still frowning. But I guess it couldn't hurt to see what she wants. It might be worth our time, he finished, shrugging. Then we need to plan, Harry declared. Even if she has given a vow, I don't trust her at all. Let's see what we can come up with. I'm quite interested in meeting the famous Bellatrix Lestrange, he finished, shaking his head at his own anticipation. I wouldn't be so keen, Sirius intoned. She's not the most pleasant person, and I am guessing 15 years in Azkaban did very little to improve her mental state, he added knowingly.